The third quarterfinal is just a few moments away, so welcome back to the stage, Jade Dragons. Facing them, give it up for the Oni Warriors.
Welcome back, everybody, as we continue with the SMITE World Championships here live from Arlington, Texas. It's good to be back here on the desk. Aggro going to bring you this one here from the desk alongside Trelly, Relly, and Hazer. Fellas, thanks for entertaining me here as you hard carry me back through my return to the analyst desk. But I've got a feeling that this one is going to be nice and easy for us because this is an unbelievable matchup we have here. The Jade Dragons up against the Oni Warriors, two SPL teams, our first double SPL matchup of the World Championship. And it's got a lot of history between these two teams, Hazer. I mean, Mike and Neil have faced off many times at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are two storied teams, two teams full of experienced players. They've been around the last few years and battled it out plenty of times. We got the new blood in the mid lane for the Dragons, but this is a matchup we've seen, and we know exactly what to expect from the players.
We expect a good match because they have historically had some very, very good ones. Trelly, I like where Hazer brought that to Pegon and what he has done in the mid lane. How do you think he's going to fare with this being his first time playing in front of a crowd of this magnitude at all?
That's a big question because I was in PBM stream a bit ago. I asked the same thing, and he said, very simply, Daniel, he just plays like he's the best. It's simple as that. Doesn't matter where you put him. Pegon is going to be on top of the world. Whether or not listening to this, these screaming fans is going to shake him, I doubt it. When you're that confident, nothing's going to shake you. However, it's not going to be an easy matchup. We've talked about it a bit. There are some difference in God-style plays that Dardez is going to bring as well. I do think it's going to be a heavily contested lane, and I'm excited for it.
I mean, Hazer, you were there on the world stage coaching a bunch of very successful teams. How different is it for a player getting on that stage for the first time, and how much does it help, do you think, that this is clearly a very pro Jade Dragons crowd?
I'm not sure how much the crowd helps, but the experience definitely helps a lot. In my career, when I've been with players who have had less experience, you can have them crumble. You can have the pressure get to them, and really their performance goes down a lot. And this crowd are bigging up everybody out here. I can see the Maz out there supporting Neil. It's lovely to see.
Absolutely. I mean, this crowd, not just full of Jade Dragons fans, of course, the Warrior fans out there as well, but you might have just heard that there was some mic chants going on. That's because he's standing by for an interview with Kelly on stage right now.
So much aggro. Joining me here, everyone, it's PolarBearMike. PBM, also known as Professor BM, what is it like to be back here in front of everyone?
It's like intoxicating. Like, words can't describe it, seeing everybody out here. We did a meet and greet for like 3 hours today. We had a line like wrapping around the door. We love you guys so much. We appreciate it. We're glad to see everybody. It's awesome.
I mean, to have the lore lady from all the old SMITE videos say that you guys are the fan favorites has to be one of the coolest thing ever. What is it about you and your team that gravitates the fans towards you?
I think we just show our personality. I think that we take time to stream to interact with people. We have a pretty decent history of being successful until the finals at Worlds. But other than that, we do pretty well. So I just think we just try to create that relationship,
Without a doubt. And speaking of relationships, you and Panda have been playing together for many, many years. How important is having that rapport and synergy?
There's just no better hunter that I'd ever want to play with. Max is just one of the best players, one of the best teammates I could ask for. To be up here with him for 5, 6 seasons, it's awesome.
PBMs, thank you so much, everyone. Give it up for this guy right here. And we're going to head back to the desk.
Thank you, Kelly. You heard it there from PBM. I mean, typically they do pretty well. except when we get to the finals. But this year, I do think it's a different air around this Dragons team. They don't have quite as much expectation. Charlie, how much do you think that helps them here?
I think it actually does. I think it helps them a lot because coming in as the fan favorites, coming in as the #1 seed, in past has not been good, right? It's a little bit of bad luck, but in this case, they don't have as much to prove. They can just let their gameplay do the talking, and I think that's a lot better on the mental. Coming in saying, you're actually the underdog. If you make it to the semifinals up against, whatever team, you might be looking a little bit differently. So I think they can just play, they don't have to worry, they don't have to stress, and it's gonna help them out.
Can't wait to see what they're gonna do, but of course it isn't just what the Jade Dragons are gonna do. The Oni Warriors as well, a team that we've been waiting to see if they were ever gonna get more consistent. Frankly, they didn't get a whole lot more consistent over the course of the year, but we did start to see those flashes where last year, Hazer, this roster stayed together. We didn't really see that potential be reached. At times this year, it seemed like they might have reached it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you get Dardez and Fred, especially when these guys get hot, the whole team gets hot, and they look like one of the best teams in the league. And hey, it's one weekend out of the year. You've got to be the best team in the league. They've done that on several weekends throughout the regular season. They've been the best team. They've just got to hope that they can hit at the right time and find consistency when it really matters, which is right now, most important weekend of the whole year.
It's going to be so much fun to watch, and I think that Dardez kind of finding that voice in that carry play style again with this exact pick, the Hera. I was talking on my podcast last week about his performance on this Hera in that matchup against the Solar Scarabs, and he popped into the chat and said, as soon as we were in that spot up 2-1, no, we couldn't go back to the potential reverse sweep. He said, give me Hera first pick. I don't care what they pick. That's just what I want. There's no way we're losing on it. And that's the type of confidence that we've kind of been waiting for, Trelly. It's just a matter of if they can continue it here today.
Yeah, that's the kind of talk I want to hear, right? If I'm on that team, I want to hear, give me this. I don't care what they pick. I don't care what the counters are. I'm feeling it, and I'm going to show up, and I'm going to be on point. That's the kind of gameplay that the Oni Warriors can say, and I love what Hazer just zoned in on. You have to be the best team in the world one weekend at a time, and they have shown they can beat the best teams in the world on occasion. This is that occasion. The Oni Warriors, whenever we get to hear them in interviews, they're a very emotion-based team, and listening to this crowd, either they're for you or against you. Right now, there's a lot of Dragons fans. That's only going to heat QvoFred up. That's going to make him play better.
You know it, absolutely. Fred, one of the most excitable players in the entire league. And don't forget that Neil has messed around and been the best team of the world for a weekend a couple times. Let's hear what he has to say standing by right now with Kelly.
Thank you so much, Agro. Joining me here, everyone, I have NeilMah. Now, Neil, your team is full of veterans. You yourself winning 2 World Championships as well as MVP in Season 7. What is it like competing at such a high level for such a long time?
I mean, it means everything. Coming back and seeing all the fans in our World Championship after a couple years off of that, I mean, it's just, I'm speechless. I'm just lucky to be around this long, and I just can't wait to give everyone a good set.
Well, historically speaking, going up against the Jade Dragons, you guys have had a bit of a rough season this year. What challenges were you facing that you were going to be focusing on for this matchup?
I mean, everything that happened up till now is in the past as far as I'm concerned. You show up today, you've seen what we can do, you've seen what I can do against these guys, and let's just see what happens.
But if we're going to speak about history, then we got to talk about the last 2 times that you've gone up against PBM, and you've won both times. Is that going to be a 3rd time today?
I mean, I hate to do it to all you fans out there, but all I'm saying is it might be looking a little bit less purple here tomorrow.
NeilMah, thank you so much. Everyone, give some noise for this guy right here. And it looks like picks and bans are ready to go, so let's head back on to the desk.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Neil. Look, Neil, one of the nicest guys of all time.
Oh, yeah.
But he told me earlier, if I'm cast as the villain, I got to play the villain a little bit. He said it'd be a real shame to send all these Jade Dragon fans home with a little bit of an early loss for them. But, man, the Warriors are just one of those teams, but so are the Jade Dragons. They can beat you, and they can beat themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Is it just a matter of playing safe enough to not beat yourself here, Trelly, or do you think you actually have to play aggressive?
No, I think in this case, you can't just sit back and hope that the win comes to you. You got to go out and get it. It's one of those situations where whoever wants it more is certainly going to make that issue and force it. So I'm expecting both teams to come out swinging. A lot of weight on picks and bans, though. A lot of weight on aggressive junglers. Qvo and Scream both have that ability to get extremely active pre-level 5. wouldn't be surprised if they both look towards those aggressive junglers.
Hazer, I think that these are two of the better coaches in the SPL. Cherio just making that transition to that role, and Chuck, who's been there forever and done great work for this Warriors squad. If you were coaching either of these teams, knowing that consistency is typically their biggest issue, what would you be saying?
I think on both cases, you want to kind of focus out the mid laner and maybe the jungle a little bit. I think the Dragons have a little bit of an advantage in that because they've had time to analyze the Oni Warriors drafts from that tournament just passed.
Right.
Dragons, it's been a while since we've seen them, so they might have cooked up some new things. It's going to be more difficult for Chuck than for Cherry, in my opinion.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get it started. Picks and bans ready for our third quarterfinal of the day, and it starts off with a set ban, and you were right on the money, Hazer. Looking at Pegon in particular and keeping him out of some of those comfort picks that, even though they're aggressive, when Pegon gets rolling, man, it is very, very difficult to stop. But the Naja ban is a little bit interesting to me here, Trelly, because even though Fred has had success on this pick in the past, he played it a little bit at that qualifier LAN and didn't play the best on it. Are you surprised by that Naja ban?
I'm not surprised because I think it's not so much about the Naja in particular, it's about knocking QvoFred off his game. If he's not on a comfort pick, he's going to look worse, and the Jade Dragons want to try and stop that rhythm any way they can. Whether or not the Naja would have popped off doesn't matter because it looks like the Warriors are just going to go for that first pick Cern, but insta-lock the Maui. PBM, looks like he's feeling confident about that one.
And it's hard not to after seeing what Genetics did on that god. Man, that god's design is so cool.
Who made that guy?
Who made that guy? He's pretty sweet, huh? And how about this? Ishtar as well. I mean, this duo lane, for my money right now, Hazer, this looks like the best two picks available in these two roles.
Yeah, very, very powerful in the duel right now, Maui and Ishtar. Ishtar, we've seen a lot of this matchup, Cern versus Ishtar. That seems to be one that ADCs are going towards almost as a default, and they're preferring the Cern in a lot of the matchups. I think he's the one character who can kind of keep up with Ishtar in the lane, keep the pressure out there, and scale okay. As we see Lance and Fafnir coming through. I wonder, though, if this Cern could be going into the mid lane for Dardez.
I was about to say, they played a lot of that Cern in mid. I mean, Trelly, as an ADC player, what about Cernunnos makes him this heavily prioritized right now?
I mean, you just have fantastic clear, you can box very well, and you have good control over the Interceptor, which I think since the addition of that extra buff, a lot of these hunters have been trying to grab. When you get it, you have that extra tool in 1v1s, you don't have to be as scared, and the HP 5 really does help out.
Sure.
It's just that 1-2 punch. The Ishtar is certainly not bad. You're not wanting to give that up, but I think it's personal preference at this point. If you can hit those AoE autos, you prefer the Ishtar, and if you just want something that's relatively easy, you go for the Cern.
Well, Cern is the first pick, and then they round it out, as Hazer said, with the Lancelot and the Fafnir. It's Nemesis here for Scream in the jungle. You never know exactly what Scream's going to pick, but Nem is a historically pretty successful one for him. It's also something that Fred likes, but with the Lancelot there, we used to see some Lancelot solo, not so much these days, but still feel it's interesting how heavily the jungle was prioritized, especially after both Naja and Daji were banned in the top 3.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this Lance probably will be going into the jungle for Fred. And Lance versus Nemesis, the Nem pick's interesting here for me. They've got the disarm from Fafnir, kind of getting rid of some of that auto attack threat. Also the hammer to easily interrupt that retribution shield, which is one of the strongest bits in Nemesis' kit. And no hard CC for Lance. You really want to get that hard CC to pop him off the horse. So I'm excited to see why Scream's gone for this Nem.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Lancelot, I feel like one of his best strengths as an assassin is that he's so hard to duel as another melee character. You know, the two just create so much space, and Nem might not deal super well with that, but Scream never wanted to shy away from a historically bad matchup or anything like that. He's going to pick what he's going to pick regardless if he's feeling it. As Hera and AMC, so it looks like the Jade Dragons aren't convinced this Cernunnos is for Dardez here, Trelly.
Yeah, it looks to me like that Nemesis pick is saying, hey, we have the option to go double Hunter. We want to get some extra prod shred online. The Oni Warriors now have to fear that they're getting a possible double Hunter comp into their possible double Hunter comp. So the mind games are already at work here. They still have the ability to say, hey, this Ishtar is not for Pegon. We're just going to pick a mage or even an assassin. They just want to make sure they have enough prod shred for the late game Fizz defense stack that the Warriors could go for. With that being said, though, there's those early junglers. I mean, the Nemesis and the Lancelot both are able to get actives early. It really just depends on where you're putting that pressure, where you're looking for those ganks. And that Ullr, I think that's Pegon taking it mid, but also PandaCat's played it before.
Yep, both those guys absolutely capable of rocking this Ullr, but pressure in the mid lane, if that's going to be important, feel like that's the better place for it with the Ullr. But Hazer, I mean, Ullr, mid pressure in general has not been very heavily prioritized the last few events. Are you surprised to see the Ullr? Because if that is mid, unless the Dragons are doing something totally different, which is very possible, it is a little different than what other teams have been doing.
For sure. I think we saw Ullr twice in that SCC and SPL play-in tournament. I think once in solo, once in mid, and it lost both games, I believe.
Yes.
BennyQ did manage to put a decent amount of damage on it, and his brothers picked it up here. Maybe he's going to show his older brother how it's done.
Yeah, very possible. As the Artio is locked in, Nika going to be taking that to the solo lane, and it is the Ram, so it is a double hunter composition here for the Warriors, and they insulated themselves with this nicely. You get Artio, a good amount of magical damage coming out of solo, and now Ram with this Fafnir and Cernunnos. I mean, Cern's so good on objectives already, one of the best hunters with his Prot Shred and the Heavy Glaive passive. Add in Fafnir and Ram, I mean, our Oni Warriors just going to be looking to control objectives with this, Trelly.
Yeah, I'm thinking Frenzy, Girdle, like all the objective pressure you can get early on Shogun's Kusari, trying to get that attack speed online. That's the way the Oni Warriors like to play. And it's annoying because most teams, it's rare to get one Rama player on your team, and the Oni Warriors have two. Dardez and Boat could both take this pick, and they both can hit every single snipe. It's not easy to deal with. You always have to be looking up at the sky when you're looking for objective pressure, but more specifically, you gotta watch out for that dive, and the Jade Dragons just locked in fineokay on the Chulainn.
Man, tons of physical damage on the Jade Dragon side. I mean, certainly an early sovereignty in the works here for Neil. Is the Nemesis enough here, Hazer, especially for someone like Ullr, who's usually a little bit more early game? Titan's main obviously great, but maybe not the best percent pen abuser. Do you think the Jade Dragons have enough to facilitate this 4 hunter, or this 4 physical comp?
It's going to be interesting. I mean, the Shred's going to have to come through. This Nem's going to have to do a lot of work, and I do think having 2 hunters which will go down different build paths can be nice. You can have a crit build, and you can have a mace build from the Ullr. We did see a really interesting build out of Genetics earlier on where he went Sov, and I think he went the
Jade
Emperor's helm
yeah,
to reduce the physical damage coming into him. So I wonder if we could see something like that out of Neil this game.
I think it's very possible. It's going to be unbelievable. Quarterfinal number 3 finally about to get started. Make some noise. We get headed over to the casters to bring us the action.
What do you say, Gormizer? We got some Jade Dragons fans in the house, huh? For our 3rd quarterfinal of the day. And they're up, they're roaring, they're ready to watch their team play. But I know we got some Oni homies, some Oni Warriors fans out in the crowd as well. It's going to be a battle.
Yeah, it's a wave of purple battling NeilMah's parents who are amping up everybody.
That's
I mean, you get, like, while they're coming out, amping them up, you can feel the energy. I'm excited for this set. And I'm certain that the crowd should be as well. I mean, if you look at these 2 teams and what they've been able to do, but specifically as the desk is mentioning, like with the Dragons, the tear that they have kind of been on pretty much ever since they picked up Scream.
Yep.
But when you look at the Warriors and the way they fought to get here, this has the capabilities of being one of the best sets we see today, maybe the event.
Yeah, there's many, many worlds where this one goes 3, right? Because there's the unknown of the Oni Warriors come tournament time, right? NeilMah, Nika. Think about the emotion we saw from Nika when they actually qualified to Worlds. And Nika steps up, and my final question to him in that interview was, Nika, do you have what it takes to get it done? Of course, was his answer. Of course, who knows what this group can do with one another. They have gone deep into tournaments of past, SMITE World Championships of past, but they're fighting up against the juggernauts that are the Jade Dragons. Surprisingly come into this event in 3rd seed. They chose the Oni Warriors out of the final 2 options. And it's the Jade Dragons that love to play early, love to play fast.
And it is that pace of game, I think, that is going to cause a little bit of struggle for the Warriors, right? Holding on, especially from what we got to see during the last event.
Let's do it.
They're going to have a lot of work cut out for them to keep things going for them. And specifically, I mean, and touching on what you said, I mean, Neil, you have to give him credit where credit's due. If he got an MVP a few years ago, it is because of the presence he brings in moments like this, in the live environment, on the stage, making sure everybody stays calm. Same Worlds that he gets that MVP, he helps Qvo get the first win that he had picked up since the launch tournament. You got to think they're trying to recreate that magic. Nika, despite being one of the most touted solo laners across SMITE, still looking for a win. I think the Warriors they have so much potential behind them. And we've been saying it all week coming up to this. This set, it depends a little bit on the Dragons, but a lot of it is how much are the Warriors. What are we going to see out of them? Are we going to get close to their ceiling? Because if so, that is almost an impeccable and almost untouchable team.
Well, Gore, they're a team that's basically beaten everyone in the league at points. The Oni Warriors have what it takes to get it done. Early support purple buff fight, as we're so often seeing, requires inch perfect secure. NeilMah will drop it for his squad. PolarBearMike loses half of his HP in trade. Doesn't often result in all that much over in the laning phase, but Nice way to start off the lane, maybe burn a couple extra potions off PolarBearMike. Guarantee that your AD carry can go pick up their buff.
Also force him to feel a little awkward early on. I mean, like you said, you're going to heal up, but now you've lost the aggression in your lane, right? You can't stand as far forward as you want as a Maui, and you're not going to be able to pull anybody from this range. Granted, right at the tower range, I mean, maybe it's actually what you want, right? You're right in the position where one good pull gets you right where you need to be. Unfortunately for the Warriors, they're not going to be able to capitalize on that too heavily. And they haven't done anything too insane when it comes down to the lane.
Oh, he used his emblem. Mike will be slowed down on the back pedal. NeilMah has sprint, so that's worth looking at. Could be a sprint frenzy later on in the game. Talk about a go button if that's where NeilMah ends up going. I'll levy you a question here, Gore. You think Dragons fans or their players more rabid for an early first blood here? We know the Dragons love to play quick. Their fans are so riled up for this game. Everyone's so excited to see exactly what this team can get done here this weekend. Would not be surprised if some of that energy starts to build up, maybe makes itself known in the early laning phase.
Out of the two, have to give it to the fans.
The
right?
fans, right?
I mean, like maybe Scream and Pegon together.
Right.
But the crowd probably more than anything rooting and trying to get the Dragons ahead. And honestly, a first blood, especially in games like this, in teams like this that have played each other so often, right? All the matchups we've had so far today are SCC games that are teams that had not played against most of these SBL squads or had lost against these SBL squads. Now you get someone that you've met time and time and time again. And yeah, the head-to-head skews Dragons, but knowing what the Warriors are capable of, and specifically knowing the kind of practice that a lot of these teams had coming into this, First Blood feels explosive. The way the duo lane's been going, Sun set up from Neil, all it takes is one hammer and a really well-placed position, and suddenly you're just gonna run down where they go. And the longer it goes, I mean, granted, we're not even 3 minutes in, but if we start to see something like we saw out of the Bolts earlier, where it's taken 15 minutes, all of a sudden,
Neil got it.
It's instant.
Neil steals away the Interceptor, so a small victory on the dual lane side of the map. And before that, Gore, Pegon solo invading Dardez's red buff, gets the littles, does not get the full-on actual buff. But it gives you a mindset of how Pegon wants to play, because there are some questions not around his skill, right? We know exactly what Pegon has brought to the table all year long, but how will he react to being on the world stage, hearing the Dragons fans, the Oni Warriors fans yelling while he's playing? Who knows? In the solo lane battle, little comedy sprinkled in there. fineokay on the Chulainn, Nika on the Artio, Gore. I think if you rewind SMITE history, these are a couple of the more storied picks for both of these players.
I mean, to the point where there was a period of time, fineokay is winning every game he's playing on King Arthur, and they're getting it just all in a row. Makes it look nigh unstoppable. Finally, someone bans it.
Right.
And he locks in the Chulainn, and he goes, yeah, I just play the same style of game. And that's exactly what he can bring. I mean, honestly, both of these, the setup, we saw some of the Artio earlier, but I think looking at that in comparison to what fineokay has accomplished in the past on this Chulainn, it's honestly a lot of work for Nika to keep up that level of impact, because we know fineokay is going to dive. We know it's going to be really big knock-up potential, really good solo potential. And so I think a lot of pressure on that right-hand lane. I mean, we already saw Scream kind of poke his head over in case he wanted to go for it. Artio is going to be a difficult target, but you're Nemesis, you've got a Chulainn. If Nika goes too far forward and the two of you are able to get there, that's going to be an easy kill.
How about the jungle matchup in this one as well? Scream has been electric for this Jade Dragons team all year long. When the Dragons made some changes, we were wondering how it would look. Remember, we kept asking, is this the honeymoon phase, or are you guys really actually this good? Right when they won SMITE Summer Masters, the Dragons players, they were adamant that this was not just a honeymoon phase, and that Scream and this roster had what it takes to get it done, and they did get it done about halfway through the year. Now, QvoFred has had some momentous SMITE World Championship games in the past. QvoFred can be hot and cold for this Oni Warriors team as well. Lancelot, a pick right full of opportunity early in game one to really make a statement, especially up against Scream. That'll be a fun battle.
Well, and the desk had mentioned it, right? If you're looking just gods, Scream, or specifically Nemesis, struggling maybe a little bit into the Lancelot. Melee gods struggle a little bit into him just because of his mobility, things like that to try and keep up with. So maybe a matchup that is going to be a little problematic. I had it on my notes. I wonder if Aggro ended up seeing it.
You got one of the things I had, which was how do you keep track of them all?
There's actually 20 tabs open on that laptop.
That's right.
one of the things I put down for Screammmmm, it was the only thing I wrote down, which is he gets in and he gets stuff done. That's exactly what he's going to be. He might go like 8 and 8, but it's still 8 kills.
Right.
That's all that matters. If he's going in, he might die, but he's going to try to get something, whether it's a setup and an assist for him, or if it's going to be a kill for himself, as well as his team being able to find it. I think that Qvo, as you mentioned, electric plays, energy. And I advise anybody, if you're watching in venue, if you're watching on stream, just make sure you always have a line of sight on Qvo's camera.
Yep.
Because there are going to be moments, if they make a big play, you're going to see it. From Qvo more than maybe the actual gameplay. And it's that point where I'm going to recycle a joke I already made, but like, chairs need to be reinforced, right?
Yeah, I was going to say,
if
if you're sitting in the audience and he comes running at you, QvoFred, it's not you, it's your chair that he's after. If he's really feeling the energy of that moment, though the chair on the stage, much more accessible for QvoFred, if that's what the
much
moment
easier
calls
to punch.
for. That's right. Probably looks a little safer for the hands as well, if that's where QvoFred chooses to put some aggression. Now, Screammmmm hovering on the left side of the map here, but just farming up some of the back camps. And 2 team score. I think the Jade Dragons, often known for being this early in-your-face style of team, which they are. However, also a team that'll take you mid-game. They'll take you late game, and they look really good at those phases of games as well. So I think the Oni Warriors, you got to not lose early. In the first 6.5 minutes, they've done that early on here. But have I spoken too soon? No. Ults exchange between Screammmmm and QvoFred. But that said, Gore, not out of the woods just yet. You got a long road against the Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors if we get that team today.
Yeah, I was, while you were talking about that, I'm like, I kind of like the fact that Dragons playing it slow. Got a double hunter, you've got really good front line.
Right.
Feels like it's going to be really great.
We're spooling up.
And then you look over at the Warriors and go, well, you've got a double hunter, you've got a really good front line. Everything that is true about one team is true for the other. I would not be surprised if this is just played a lot for that big late game, some of those 5-on-5s, maybe 3-on-3s in mid.
Yep.
But at this point, I mean, you're really looking at the small little nuances, right? Who's getting the neutral objectives? Mid-camp farm actually matters a lot in the 7.5 minutes just to get a small lead, and the gold isn't massive enough, but a first blood is going to be huge to turn things around. Then you start factoring in soon enough, 2.5 minutes away, Pyromancer starts to become the equation. Very easy to try and pull that objective, not the end of the world if you lose it, but really good if you can pick it up and try to levy that then into a Gold Fury. I think that both of these teams have a lot of quick objective burn, and so pressure onto PBM, big island pulls, things like that are going to set up his team. fineokay, NeilMah, Nika, the front lines on both teams, they're going to be the ones that lead the way for these carries to find the success for their team, to burn down objectives or burn down team fights.
Yep.
And it's going to start at this pace, right? Patiently stacking items. You've got a Transcendence that's going to be the big difference maker, so a little more lifesteal for Dardez. It's already baked into the kit as well. But Pegon on this Ullr, we've seen it have some insane moments. I think that those two, especially in the mid 3v3 over the next 5-10 minutes, maybe going to be some of the bigger impact players.
Gore, when you take a step back from this matchup, you really look at, please don't, you're right on the edge here. I don't want you going into the crowd. When you look at the history of a lot of these players on both teams, intertwined as far as SMITE World Championship history goes. Yeah. Look at the roster of the Jade Dragons, NeilMah and QvoFred, and that Ghost roster years ago. It's just wild they somehow all find a way to keep running into one another. This time, unfortunately, maybe for the drama early in this tournament, it'll sure bring us a good quarterfinal. It's both teams, Gore, you mentioned you get double AD carries, get the Fafnir for NeilMah. Could be a difference maker. Yet to be seen how much. But you get Nika on the Artio, so a little extra magical damage there. Pythag's piece early in the build. fineokay, physical damage out of the solo lane. So slightly more diverse damage from the Oni Warriors. Could be an advantage if you're really splitting hairs later in the game.
Yeah, Nika being able to add a little more. That sovereignty specifically for Neil, getting a little extra worthwhile, right? Just because you have that small difference in your own roster. So it feels like an already good pickup for them. You had mentioned the fact that it's Pythag's piece, but if you're looking at healing for your team and sustainability, something that the Warriors are going to be able to run rampant with, I think that they're in a good spot for that one. A lot of it will be on these rotations from the solo lane. We've seen it already a few times today. I mean, just last set, Baskin, right? Having those rotations super early on really help lead their way. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to see Nika or, in this case, maybe fineokay, start to make their way over towards mid, especially if they're looking at a Pyromancer. It's the easiest thing for the solo laners, but if you're starting to look at a Gold Fury, upgraded teleports are going to be into the conversation, how much gold you have, the farm, how that's going, or just straight up how fast you can walk across the map.
Yep.
making a big difference for him.
Neil's gotten a lot of value out of the sovereignty already. Dardez pulled back, ulted by Scream as well, but the beads get used, and it's wonderful timing. QvoFred right through the heart of the Jade Dragons. He'll go up down onto Pegon, but who's got the last bit of damage? It's QvoFred on his gank in the mid.
And look, just gets on the horse, walks away. They know exactly what kind of play they want to make. They find him, they catch him out. It's a good engage from Mike. I mean, you immediately make Dardez feel uncomfortable, you force the beads, but then it's just the ult, the presence of the Lancelot that Qvo is able to bring in. Unfortunately for Pegon, there's a lot in an Ullr kit that can really help you. But with this kind of build, especially the Transcendence early on, not uncommon, but he finished stacking it like right then, didn't really have anything else. The punchback is not going to be there for the Dragons. So good early pressure, and a good first blood. Getting it onto your jungler as well is going to feel great. You're already feeling like you're slightly more impactful than Scream because of the kill, but also just in terms of God pick, feels like you're going to be able to kind of dictate more of the pace. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Qvo start to ramp up a little more, showcase and show face around some of these lanes a little more often.
PandaCat will send some damage towards Vote and NeilMah. Should be fine. We'll back roll away. And not only pacing Gore, itemization-wise, QvoFred gone straight damage here. Brawler's Beat Stick, Crusher right off the bat. Scream gets Golden Blade. That'll help out with farming.
Yep.
Into a Berserker Shield after that. So, of course, you get a little power, a little offensive utility, but also slightly defensive there before going into the Light Blade. And so that battle, if you're talking about early burst damage from QvoFred versus what Scream is going to provide maybe a bit later on, great early start here for this Oni Warriors team. That said, has not resulted in that crazy of a lead. 300 or so gold, the real difference maker here. And how many times have we seen that today? We've gone 12, 13-minute mark, first blood, kills here, and there. But the fighting back and forth around the neutral farm and the objectives has been so effective. We haven't seen the margin really open up until 15, 16, 17 minutes when those first objectives get pulled.
Yeah, first team to get a Fury and a Pyro, right? You need both at this point, it feels like, to feel like you have a true lead. It's maybe going to be the one that takes a step ahead. I'm really interested in watching the support builds right now. Specifically, you look at Mike. Typically what we've seen in the past, if you grab an Emperor's Armor like super early on, stat-wise, really helpful, especially when you're going up a Fizz team, but it's good for defense against a double hunter. It's good for offense with a double hunter. So it feels like the Dragons are already kind of gearing up for a mentality of we're going to be sieging, and the Warriors are going to have to deal with it. On the other side, though, I love what NeilMah has done, and I'm really wondering what else they're going to do, because as we see for Mike, when you upgrade Horrific Emblem, eventually there's some attack speed and some damage reduction, but you're getting that now in your build from Neil. You know you're going to be up in their front. You know you're going to have a coerce. You're going to have a lot of help.
PandaCat, has he done enough? Oh, I don't think he's going to get any stuns on this one. So Vote should have the chase down. Vote also has the snipes. Can he do enough damage to set it up? Won't need it. It's a 2v1 over in duo, and the Oni Warriors stake their claim on the left side of the map. And Gore, there's an Oni Fury, Gold Fury, left standing.
It's going to be an easy pickup for him. Mike's still hanging around. You've got Pegon who can rotate in. It just doesn't feel like the fight you want to take.
Landfall.
But Scream, they're looking for something in mid.
He has landfall. Mike, can he flip a coin? Will it land? Jade Dragons. No, it won't. Gets reset. And the Oni Furies, a kill and an objective. The Oni Warriors, excuse me. But now there's a fight happening over in mid. Uh-oh. Dardez is in trouble. And Dardez drops to Pegon. Jade Dragons strike paid her. The Aegis now used by the Ullr beads. Bring out the stun on the flip side. fineokay's on a rampage, and he's walking down mid, but Vote's here out of duo.
Qvo barely able to get out of this. No mana, no health to his name, Neil. In the same boat, Vote has to play carefully, stun off the mark from Mike. And that might just be enough to give him some wiggle room. Unfortunately, it's still double hunter on the other side. That tier 1 is not safe, but no, Nika's going to teleport in. They want more.
Nika's teleporting back in. Scream, he's alone underneath the tier 1 here. He's got to use the beads. He'll take a tower shot as well. Tier 1 tower left standing. Big swing here for the Oni Warriors in this game, Gore. Not only making a statement to PandaCat, NeilMah rotating left. Fury after that, resetting it perfectly, and then defending your tier 1 in mid.
And specifically dancing around the island the way they did. That's a massive island. Try and dodge. Unfortunately for Mike that he's not able to get the steal, but again, just well played, well positioned by the Warriors. And a risky one to go for, typically, and we've seen this in the bolts earlier, we see it typically, the Pyromancer is the one you want to play around early. So if you lose, it's not the end of the world. Gold Fury feels like a big deal. And if you're the Warriors, you get both.
Yep, got both.
Suddenly your gold lead has blown completely out of the water from 300 only up to 1,300. Actually, not as much as you'd expect.
Yeah, blown out of the water relative to where they were just a few moments ago. They tripled it, quadrupled it. And so for the Dragons fans, not heavily worried just yet. We saw a great initiation there, Gore, from fineokay. That's giving me some confidence in this Chulainn a bit later on in the game. Big knockup, setting up for AoE damage from Pegon, potentially. PandaCat on the follow-up. This Jade Dragons team still slowly scaling up, almost at the same rate the Oni Warriors are. Talk about late game double hunter compositions.
And when you look at it though, it's always the engage around him. I think Nika's going to be a huge player for the Warriors, but fineokay, we saw what the knockup can do. He only hit one with the last one, let alone if he's able to get into a nice big grouping around a fire giant. You add in the island from Mike, all of a sudden with the pull, you've got so much set up from the Dragons, and that's excluding Scream's ult, which is going to help burn down, presumably Nika, Qvo, or Neil. Whoever they want to throw it on is just going to get absolutely evaporated off the map. And so I really like that the Dragons, despite the fact that they lose a couple objectives, kind of keep their claws dug in to the dirt, make sure that they're not getting pushed too far back. They're going to still be present around fire giant fights when we start getting into that. And I think when it comes to 5-on-5s, they get to dictate the pace of it. If they are getting engaged on, I mean, look at Neil. He's playing a Fafnir, has a single target stun. You're really good in this phase of game, early, mid, looking for those individual picks. As the game starts to progress, that's going to struggle a little more.
Gore, I think level 12 also going to be very important for NeilMah here. So often we see, what is it, Frenzy on the Fafnir.
Yeah.
You transform, drop the Chorus, drop the Frenzy. In
Burn
moments like that,
anything in
right,
front of
the
you.
opposing squad almost doesn't have time to reply around objectives. So I'm keeping my eye on NeilMah when he goes back to base, able to upgrade that relic. Now Mike has already done so. He's gone horrific into Frenzy.
Yeah.
So NeilMah could do that as well. He's already gone Sprint. We'll find out his itemization choice here. Shogun's Kusari also picked up here, Gord. So there's so much utility as far as passives building up, and it is Frenzy indeed for NeilMah. Whereas Mike, on the flip side of things, Gore, my eyes do not deceive me. They don't. Emperor's Armor for PolarBearMike.
Yeah.
So you're getting utility from that, but in a bit of a different way from what NeilMah's expecting.
And you know, I was touching on it earlier, but it feels like one that, in my mind, at least what we've seen in the past, outside of just good stats on it, it feels really good into a Fizz comp.
Well, Fino has one too.
But theoretically, it screams to me that you want to start pushing down towers, pushing down Phoenixes. You're going to be diving a little bit more. And so I'm expecting the Dragons at any point, drop of a hat, to just jump on in. But it also gives you some decent defense if you lose this fire giant of things the way they've been going, kind of keep airing towards the Warriors. Gives you a little bit of patience. I really like the horrific. I think I love it into this kind of comp. I've talked about it in double hunter compositions in the past, but having attack speed reduction, damage reduction in a relic, especially on someone who's going to be as deep in the fight as PBM, feels really solid.
Whoa. This 18 minutes score.
Wow.
Without a tangible lead, really, for the Jade Dragons. They're behind in gold, but maybe a head in pressure, triple stun from Nika. Scream has dropped his ult. fineokay finds the first knockup. Frenzy's now been used from NeilMah. QvoFred brought back into the Dragon's Den.
The stun.
What's happened to Dardez? He's on left. He's been melted. And PandaCat with the opening kill.
And look, if you were feeling confident about an FG before, now you can surge forward, whether it's catching Neil in the dragon form, trying to fuck Nika, or just chasing Dardez down. You can just keep going for it.
Man, Scream just rotates right back through mid and makes the big play for the Jade Dragons. You thought they were feeling confident earlier around the FG. They've got 2 extra kills now. It's going to have to be the tanks. If the Oni Warriors have any hope of stealing, they've got to try to catch the Jade Dragons between a reset here. It'll continue to burn down. NeilMah, Nika stepping forward. Vote though, he's going to get zoned out by Scream. He's not going to have the chance. Nika, he's been stunned as the fire giant remains. Scream alone with the backline though. Scream may end up dying here. Vote still has ultimate. Fire giant Gore, it's been reset.
That's going to take, I mean, look at the damage they're taking. Honestly,
they're dropping it.
That's a huge play. Just trying to zone out, just the threat of Vote's ult was enough. And that's what Scream's trying to do. He's trying to zone him out, trying to knock him down, but doesn't get the health bar low enough to TKO him. Keeps Vote right in that tier 2 area. You start losing your health bar. You can't stay up as far as you wanted to. And has to fall back. And that's where, going back to that conversation, not just double hunter, but a lot of auto attackers on the Dragons. And you see heavy itemization. You mentioned the Shogun's Kusari, good for the Warriors, but I see 2 Witchblades. I see a lot of focus on trying to slow down the Dragons' DPS. And Neil, in just being there, right? Is he going to be able to steal a fire giant without his ult with just a single hammer? Like, we've seen it, but it's not going to be common. But instead, he's creating this chasm of DPS that the Dragons are struggling to make up for. So keeps the FG alive on the board, makes sure that they don't necessarily lose the small lead they've been able to build up, which at this point has kind of turned into something negligible. and gives them the time to regroup that they needed.
Now the Jade Dragons, they forced the Oni Warriors to reply last time, not in time. Pyromancer to the Jade Dragons. I think probably smart there, Gore. If you're the Oni Warriors, you got baited in a bit around that last FG. Immediately jumped on by the Jade Dragons, not allowing that to happen for just the Pyromancer. Fantastic mental resilience maybe from the Oni Warriors, but I love it from the Jade Dragons as well, knowing exactly what they can force the Oni Warriors to do.
I think there's a lot of pressure from them, right? I mean, that is exactly what it is. They should be the ones calling the shot. With the build like this, you're looking for so much in terms of aggression on towers, so much in terms of aggression onto neutral objectives, to the point where I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to position around the Fire Giant. Primal Fury on the other side is a very quick pickup, but if you're not in the right kind of positioning for this, you're going to lose a fire instantly to the other team that has Double Hunter. So you have to play it very cautiously, very carefully where you step in the jungle. I also think picks at this point are insane. If you're looking at builds, the carries are at the point where junglers are going to struggle pretty heavily trying to get back to them.
Yep.
If you're Qvo trying to commit onto PandaCat, PandaCat's going to be able to stun you, bop you 3 times with an auto, and you're just going to be dead. Same thing, kind of vice versa. Scream dashing in at Vote. Once that shield is gone, a lot of your safety mechanisms disappear. And with the build that Vote has, specifically having a little bit of crit in there as well as some anti-heal built onto that, it's going to slow down that capability to try and chase him down. Instead, I like what they're doing, which is pick off the tier 1 tower in right, pick off a tier 1 tower in mid. Doesn't feel like a lot, grand scheme, but when you look at the things that it's opening, suddenly if you get a Fire Giant, you've got a beeline to pick up 1,500 gold and a Phoenix if you get a big enough fight. So the Dragons just opening up win conditions, opening up opportunities to make sure that the next few minutes are as lucrative as possible.
I don't know what it is with me today. These even Fire Giant fights just keep popping up. And there's not a lot of map pressure, to your point, Gore, one way or another. We're still so early on in the game. Fire minions, we're concerned about that. 10 minutes from now. Feels like you're awaiting the big play. Can the Jade Dragons complete that dive a bit better? And the same thing you say about PandaCat, Gore. I think, talk about Pegon as well. And Ullr, he'll axe you, he'll jump away, he'll turn around the damage quickly. And that build starting to get to that point as well. Heartseeker just now finished for Pegon.
Oh my god.
And so burst damage will be flowing through the mid laner of the Jade Dragons. So the conversation we haven't had yet, Gore, around Pegon, his mental. He has been lights out for the Jade Dragons so far this year. Now playing on the world stage, hasn't shown me any hesitancy. Nope. I have seen the same old Pegon that I'm used to seeing.
It's the same thing, and I've mentioned it time and time again. The fact that he is a rookie this year in the SBL blows my mind for what he has been able to bring to the table. As far as players go, I think Pegon, and I said this unashamedly, and I'll say it again, but I think the best mid that this core of a team has been able to pick up in years, right? Always making it to the World Championship, almost always being able to perform, but always having something different, right? When Twig was playing mid, when Hurry was playing mid, nothing felt like it clicked the same way as it does with Pegon.
No, is it now? Starting to ignite a bit. Nika gonna get pulled aside. Mike's over!
Oh my god!
My goodness, before you can blink, Dardez has gotten the kill. Still some fight left though for the Jade Dragons. fineokay and Scream there in the back line. Vote's got the turnaround though. Vote just needs the last auto, won't get it, but Scream, he's out of the fight. Oh, what's happened? Pegon's lived. Pegon's lived, and he's turned the damage. fineokay, he reinitiates as well, and the Jade Dragons from the brink add 2.
They start to pull back a little bit, but look at the health bars, right? Still healthy enough for the Warriors. Not enough to pull a Fire Giant, but coming out of that, the burst they were able to bring, still 2 for 1, massive favor for the Dragons, and specifically the way they run it, right? Pegon running back is able to pull the team apart, separate the Warriors from each other. You've got a few that are diving really deep around the back camps for the Dragon, and a few that are fighting around the back camps of the Warriors because of how far spread the team was. Allows someone like fineokay, someone like PandaCat, someone like Pegon to put a lot of damage out there. Unfortunately, it cost Mike his life, but he's the most worthwhile to have die right there. And then it opens him up for something like this.
Now, Nika has teleport, not upgraded yet, though, so if you immediately want this Artio in the fight, you're going to have to wait a bit longer if you're the Oni Warriors. Smart from the Jade Dragons, though. They know they can force the Oni Warriors. Vote doesn't have ult yet either. He's close to the FG pit. The steal just a few moments away. Teleport is through here. Now the frenzy gets used, but the Jade Dragons starting to melt a bit beneath the pressure of the Oni Warriors. fineokay lets out a roar. Pegon lets out an arrow. And it's Vote who drops. Now it's NeilMah being chased down. The rookie with a 2-piece down Main Street. Might add a 3rd. Triple kill for Pegon. How's that for a rookie year? One last auto. Quads for the Jade Dragons. Pegon drops 4. Let him roar!
That says more about it than I could. The cheers, the plays, Pegon goes massive in a moment, and I love this call from them. Not only picking up the kills, really good engage from the Dragons, built around fineokay, built around
What can
Mike,
they
the
do
island,
here, Gore?
the knock-up.
What can
But
they
you
do?
can just rush down
They got
mid.
20
You're
seconds.
guaranteed a Phoenix because you've got so much time. You could risk the Titan, you could play it safe.
No,
With
no, they're gonna
3
back
towers
away.
standing,
Go back away.
I like playing it safe, but there's still a lot of gold on the map, a lot you can strip out of the jungle, and that's not including the back they're about to have. Look, when you're 6-1, you're feeling yourself on the world stage. Pyromancer back, get fire, maybe fire back, and then start tearing down the last few towers.
You think that guy's worried about playing on the main stage, Gore? That's a 4-piece for Pegon, the rookie of the Jade Dragons. And the Dragons will turn it into a Phoenix, they'll turn it into a Fire Giant, and they'll turn it into a crazy lead here in game number 1.
6,000.
This is where the Jade Dragons make their money. Think about the number of games. They're not winning early. But at the drop of a hat, they win a fight. And then out of nowhere, they erupt into a 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 gold lead. That's exactly what's happened here in game 1.
And you have to look, again, I think a lot of it comes down to the engage. When you look at Artio and you look at Fafnir, you've got a lot of single target, a lot of decent CC, at least from Artio, but it's not going to hit as many people as a massive island from Maui, as a 4-man potential knockup, right, from the Chulainn. And then you add in the Nemesis, the burn that you're going to add from your team, the Ullr, the Ishtar, the damage that has the follow-up. I'm scared of what this Dragons team is going to be able to accomplish. Double Hunter with Fire Giant, with the way they've been playing the last few fights. The Relic is all up for them. They are set to go into another fight. If you're the Warriors, I don't think you're stepping up to the tier 2. Maybe a soft defense. You show face, you look, but with the speed that
quick.
they are going to tear down a tier 2, honestly, it's risky just hanging around here. And seeing them, I mean, one good stun onto Neil or Nika if they throw Scream's ult as well, which luckily he's on the other side of the map, so maybe they can put a pause on that, but you get burned down almost instantly. This tier 2, I'm surprised to see the Dragons play it as slow as they are.
But that's when the Dragons kind of coil up,
because they get
right?
the other one anyway.
Right, they coil up, they get ready to strike. Jade Dragons, massive advantage now in game number 1. Seemingly at the drop of a hat, Scream is going to get a split push here. He's alone on this right side Phoenix. He'll get about half of it done before QvoFred shows up. He'll dash away, min-maxing every ounce of damage that you can do. Jade Dragons hoping to do here in the early goings of their first FG. And the first FG, Gore, late enough into the game, opens up siege opportunities while the Oni Warriors are going to have to split the map.
And it's the perfect split from the Dragons as well, right? Scream has put enough pressure on the map. Now with fineokay, you should be able to get the Phoenix. If not, you're going to get a successful fight. Have to play it carefully and cautiously, but while you're over here, you're pulling so many resources from the left side, really opening things up for your hunters to get something done. And meanwhile, you have to talk about the timing of the mid-Phoenix, because it has been nothing but perfect. It allowed them a Fire Giant with it. They haven't had to worry about its respawn or the Fire Minions. They've just had this pressure ready for them.
Pegon is hitting everything. This is a pick.
Oh my
Late enough
God.
into the game, you can't afford to take all this damage if you're the Oni Warriors.
Nika's gotta die.
That's Nika, and another one for the Jade Dragons. And the fight not going any better for the Oni Warriors on the right side of the map. QvoFred's had to mount up and dash away. Left side Phoenix, it's gone.
I mean, look, easy pickups for him. Mid's gonna respawn soon, but you've got the resources to be able to spend on that one. Fire minions coming down with one guy. I mean, Nika's gone for 40 seconds. This is a very difficult defense to make if you're the Warriors. A lot of it is going to rely on Qvo.
Whoa, Fino. He's blinked forward, about to. Oh, but the Oni Warriors, they turn and burn the solo laner. PandaCat, he's got some breath left in his lungs. Can't say the same for Scream, but the bird is gone. 3 Phoenixes down for the Jade Dragons, and Vote will escape.
And the only thing that saves Vote is that Aegis. Same thing for Dardez. A lot of damage. Pegon on the hunt, looking for some more kills. Has to play it patiently. Meanwhile, they have that fight going for them. They got minions pushing in on left. Titan takes a ton of damage. You had mentioned it, mid, if they can clear this fire minion wave up, should respawn. That might be the only saving grace that the Warriors have had for the last few minutes.
You want to see a 5-man death ball here, Gore, for the half HP Titan? Or is that a little risky for your blood here in game 1?
I like risky calls. All right, so first I'm the one who's always rooting for the weirdest, wildest. Right. Yeah, I am not definitely not the level head when it comes to shot calling. I don't mind that, though. I mean, look, you've got the damage. Your Frenzy's going to be up relatively soon. Maybe a minute's too long. I can't imagine the Warriors are going to allow you anywhere near this base. They're going to put vision all throughout the jungle. You can see pings. They're going to try and keep their eyes on as much of this, specifically because how easily you could just waltz in if you're the full Dragons and take care of the Titan. You're still at a point, though, especially with the power play fading away. It's a free Fire Giant. It's going to be enhanced. Maybe the Warriors are able to step up to this, but they've got so much defending to do, even with left pushed up as far as it is, that it's so risky to be that far ahead. If you even lose a single person, you're probably losing the Titan. You have to be able to stay alive. You want to feel comfortable. I'm surprised to see them all over here.
Oh, we've seen this before, Gore. We've seen this before. Let the minions walk by. Okay, looks like a couple backs getting channeled here. Are they gonna? They're gonna wait out the waves. Gotta let the play unfold. It's only PolarBearMike who may make his way to left, but I think he's covering this. He's looking over on that side of the jungle, but maybe just missed. No, he sees him now. Oni Warriors walking into the Jade Dragons side of the jungle. I don't know if the Oni Warriors know that the Jade Dragons know, but they know now. The fight begins, and it's Vogt who's on the wrong side of things. He dashes away. Up to the sky he goes. That's about a bit of time. Nika left running down Pegon. Gotta find the kill here, but Nika instead getting burnt through. Survives for the time being. PandaCat drops the first. Screammmmm stays alive on the other side. And Jade Dragons pick up a double for PandaCat. QvoFred and Nika last alive.
And look, they can just chase him down. There's so much you can try to do, but no ult for Qvo. Nika with barely any presence. They got Fire Minions, Dave. The Dragons are looking good for game 1.
Gore, that feels like a Hail Mary type play. The Jade Dragons, they were quiet in the first 15, but they ignited the quadra kill from the rookie mid laner PandaCat. Flipped this game on its head. Jade Dragons up 1-0.
You just got to talk about it. Engage in the late game, fineokay, PBM. The setup they had, quadra kill aside, Pegon's damage output. You see PandaCat's damage output, 29,000, 31,000 between the two of them.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely insane what they were able to do as the double hunter. And then you start factoring in all of these other equations. I mean, you're looking at the Warriors, you say Hail Mary, and we got to talk about a little bit of SMITE history. You go back way when Mouse Sports making a play like that. It works for them.
Yep.
It is not an easy play to pull off. And so impressive from the Dragons, just making sure that Mike catches it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to go for a play like that.
I was gonna say, I think Mike had coverage on that play.
Yeah.
Saw it. Scream blinks forward. Vogt actually did a really good job at the end of that fight, extending out his life, went up to the sky. In the meantime, though, the positioning of Pegon was near perfect. PandaCat was perfect. I mean, it was an incredible turnaround game. And remember, if you talk about the win conditions of the Jade Dragons, it's not only the early death ball. They'll drag you 15, 20 minutes, win a fight like we saw, and the game's over. They are fantastic at one individual fight, ending the game.
And recognizing where their strengths were throughout that one, right? Recognizing that, hey, look, Chulainn gonna outweigh the Artio. On the other side, your Maui gonna outweigh the Fafnir. If you're gonna play like that, if you're going to have that sort of presence, there's a reason you got all these fans out there. It's because that's the level of play that you're going to make.
Listen to him. All of that for the rookie mid laner of the Jade Dragons. Smile on his face. You know what's hilarious? You know what's so funny? Pegon hates doing just individual interviews with us, but then drops a 4-piece on the main stage in the SMITE World Championship quarterfinals. The guy's an enigma. He's an enigma.
We've told him time and time again, hey man, if you can just if you calm down just slightly, you're not going to get pulled aside for anything. If he does that again in game 2, or if it takes us there, depending on the Warriors, all the way to game 3, that's the kind of performance that gets you pulled aside.
It's up to the Warriors, though, Gore. I agree. Jade Dragons, they'll take game 1 on the back of a quadra kill from Pegon. Desk will break this one down right after this.
lessons learned. Of course you're gonna leave us soon as you came across who I am not. This party sucks, I'm out of luck, and no one seems to get me here. They talk about some other stuff that I don't even wanna hear. The crazy part is that I didn't feel this way before I got here. I wanna be somebody. Hanging with
Well, we were wondering how the rookie was going to perform for his first game in front of a live crowd, and I think a quadra-kill qualifies as a passing grade there for Pegon and the Jade Dragons. What an unbelievable performance from, by all means, one of the biggest X factors in this entire tournament. Pegon on the Ullr Trelly, lights out.
Yeah, I think a fantastic performance, and also I got to give credit to the front line. If PBM and fineokay are not opening up and making those plays and just absolutely getting all the relics down, then Pegon can't just run through, cycle Ullr combo after Ullr combo, and essentially free cast a team fight away. So got to give big credit to the front line there, as well as the carries doing their jobs.
Unbelievable performance from the Jade Dragons. It's a game like that that makes you want to go, I want to practice a little bit of Ullr. You know, that's a game that makes you want to practice a little bit. And now's a good time to get in your practice because we still have our Year 10 celebration event going on. This is the last week, I believe. Just over 1 week left in the Year 10 celebration. All you got to do is play 10 games of SMITE and get all sorts of free stuff, including some really, really awesome unlimited skin choices. So make sure you get your 10 games in. I know those of us here in Arlington will have to wait a little bit potentially to get those in. But once you get home, make sure you get those in before January 23rd for the Year 10 celebration event in-game. Hazer, I mean, what else is there to say there for Pegon? I mean, that moment, I mean, as soon as he got the kill on Fred, I'm checking his player cam, I'm looking at, and you could tell that that's just a moment where you got to walk back to fire, you can take a breath for a moment. That instant, just absolutely unbelievable to be able to sit there and enjoy the crowd going absolutely wild for you.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to crowd esports, I guess.
Yep.
Pegon, welcome to Pegon, I guess, crowd. If that's what Ullr looks like when you build items on at level 1, that is absolutely incredible. He runs the game from the start and does so much damage. A quadra kill in your first game in front of a crowd. I can't believe how cool, calm, and collected he looked out there.
Just unbelievable stuff. And like Trelly said, though, it wasn't just Pegon. I mean, the entire front line in particular putting in work. We saw NeilMah's parents rooting for him during the Warriors intro, but PBM's parents are here as well, and we're probably some of the people cheering along for him during that game. Here's a tweet from at PBM Papa Bear, of course, getting a picture there with Gore, Myth, and Dave. Mike's parents always so supportive and great to catch up with them, and hard to be upset with how they played in that game. I mean, not just the Maui play there from Mike, but the bounce back, I think, was really big because don't forget, it's easy to forget in the excitement of the moment for the Jade Dragons. The early game was looking pretty good for the Warriors. I mean, NeilMah, I thought in particular, played the early levels very well, had a great gank on PandaCat where he jumped behind him to block the dash. It was looking kind of like the Warriors were off to a good start there, Trelly.
Yeah, I think late game didn't have quite enough magical damage. I mean, the Artio did fine, but there was that one pivotal moment where Nika dives the backline, gets Pegon to 1 HP, Pegon turns that kill, and then the game flips on its head.
Yeah.
If maybe a little bit more fizzly or just extra damage, maybe that's a little bit different, but I think the Oni Warriors have a lot to work on to switch that game up, and if they do make those corrections, you think you're right. That could very easily have been a 1-0 for the Warriors if they just buckled down a few different things.
Early game looked good, and I thought Dardez looked very composed in that match as well, which is a good sign for Warriors fans. I mean, taking a look at the post-game stats, Pegon obviously the guy to look at 6-1-6. But PandaCat as well, 5-1-6, and actually had more player damage than Pegon in that game. It might not have been quite as flashy as the quadra kill, but what do you know? Another land where Max shows up, and all of a sudden it looks like one of the best ADCs in the world.
Yeah, just absolutely consistent damage coming out of Panda. Also, Scream went a bit of a hybrid build and out-damaged both of his hunters. Looking for that flank, getting around the back, and I think the difference there between the Warriors and the Dragons in teamfights was cohesion. I feel like the Dragons, they played those teamfights together, and they dove together and they backed out together. With the Oni Warriors, there was a little bit more split decision-making, maybe. The calls weren't quite as clean.
Yeah, I think that overall the Warriors came in with their game plan, and looked to get off to a great start. I thought this fight was excellent from the Warriors, where Dardez holds his relics forever. Pegon kind of jumps right into the waiting arms of QvoFred. And I looked at you guys and said, I don't know, that play in particular made me a little nervous for Pegon. I thought his pathing decision wasn't great. He kind of ran away from his peel, and Dardez played that fight so well. I was like, uh-oh, you know, maybe the stage is getting to him, and then what do you know, Pegon turns around and quadra kills them later. But I think there are some things to build off there from the Warriors, Hazer.
Yeah, absolutely. They started the game well. They just need to turn it into a better team fighting phase. I think maybe the Artio out of solo seemed to be a little bit outperformed by the Chulainn. Maybe they can look for a different pick there and go for just a 4-Fizz comp with a single Guardian. I didn't think Nika really had the impact that he would have wanted to. I
mean, Trelly, you look at where you are as a Jade Dragon now, and you got this win under your belt. It's a best of 3. You have so much momentum. I mean, the crowd's certainly the most into that moment. I mean, it's hard not to be when there's a quadra kill happening, but this crowd's so heavily in favor of the Jade Dragons. Is it easy to get ahead of yourself in this moment? Are you concerned about that at all?
I think there is an argument to be made, but the Jade Dragons are a team that already play with such, confidence, such swagger in their step. Getting off to a great start like that, I don't think it's going to get to them. I think they're going to keep riding that momentum. The Oni Warriors, of course, have the opportunity to try and stop that momentum and halt it. A very early first blood could do that, but I don't think that's the team that's going to get too big for their britches. I think they'll be just fine.
Taking a look at picks and bans here, Hazer. I mean, in game 1, it was a lot of focus from the Dragons onto QvoFred, but still got his pick top 2'd here from the Warriors, as we are already ready to go for picks and bans here in game number 2. Warriors in that first pick position yet again. Any switch up that you would like to see is if Cern's available, do you think he's still worth the first pick here for the Warriors?
I still think Cern is pretty strong. They have it in 2 roles. It's a decent matchup into Ishtar. If they want to put it in the duo lane, they can flex it to mid as well. I think it's when it comes to the lower end of the draft that I'd like to see changes coming out. So far, everything going the way it already did.
Yeah.
We've got the set, we've got the Osiris already taking way. So sticking to their guns are the Warriors and sticking to the plan that they came into this tournament with.
Another Rama ban, so the same 3 bans for the Warriors, and I think you might be onto this one here, Hazer. I mean, I expect a Cern first pick here, as it is the Dodgy ban, so completing the exact same ban phase from game number 1 of this set. And I think that flexibility of the Cern is so valuable in this spot that I'd kind of expect the Warriors to go that direction, but could also just kind of take something like the Fafnir for Neil, who, despite the loss, I think had one of his better games in recent memory, and that's a pick that he's played so much of recently. But it is going to be the Cernunnos here, again, for either vote or for Dardez, Trelly.
Yeah, but doing that does leave the option for the Jade Dragons to grab that Maui again. I think Mike had some very impactful ultimates. The movement around the map was also clean. The Jade Dragons are feeling it, which after a game like that, you should. They've got no problem. And again, the Jade Dragons don't have to make any adjustments. They are not in the position to where they are in any bit of trouble. It was a fantastic performance towards the end of that match, and if they iron out what made them lose in the early game, they've got no problems. It looks like the Oni Warriors are feeling the same type of way, in the sense of, hey, if we just kept riding with that early momentum, then we don't have to change anything either. They're both sticking to their guns so far.
Yeah, I think it seems to be that way. I mean, the Maui first pick certainly could have been a potential option for the Warriors, but here is our first adjustment. This was Lancelot in game number 1. This time, it's Screammmmm, not on the Nemesis, but QvoFred instead, Paul.
Yeah, I like the switch up. You get the Shred now for yourselves. You deny it from the Dragons, so maybe makes that double hunter comp on the other side a little bit weaker. And you keep that Fafnir. Fafnir also does very well with Nemesis. The chorus, good for Nem's damage. And I think taking Scream off this Nem is a good call. I think he had a great game.
I think I like this adjustment here from the Warriors quite a bit. And look, when the hand is hot, you feed it. And they go back to the Ullr here for Pegon. No surprise after how well he played in the last one, but losing that Nemesis does, I think, significantly impact this composition. Trelly, what do you think the Jade Dragons need to do to make sure that they don't get countered for this much physical damage?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they start looking for a different pick for fineokay at the very least, or even a magical jungle could be the call. Not something that Scream goes to too often, but could be in his wheelhouse. The Oni Warriors have the option to ban away those Guardians. The Athena and the Cthulhu comes to mind as well. That could be something to take away from fineokay, because he has a heck of a performance pretty much anytime he can get his hands on that character. But I echo what you were saying. Taking away that Nemesis does make this Ullr a lot harder to execute on. You're going to have to deal with a lot more of that protections, and you're not getting the same amount of shred.
Yeah, definitely agree. The Athena ban in already for the Warriors. Cthulhu was banned by the Warriors in game 1 of this set, and I think you're right to maybe toss it that way. Maybe a conversation happening right now on whether or not Scream would play Hebo jungle. I mean, that's kind of the premier magical jungler that we're seeing right now. We saw that from Captain Twig earlier on. Scream has played a lot of Poseidon jungle in his time, though Poseidon on the world stage, a historic curse. Certainly not arrogant enough to pull that out, though. I'm talking about Scream, of course he would. What do you think the Jade Dragons are going to be looking for here, Hazer, in the bottom 2?
I think a magical jungler would be nice. I expect the Cthulhu to get taken away. I wouldn't like to see the Cthulhu through. I think fineokay, it's one of his best picks. I think he's probably the best in the world on it, and it will get taken away from him. He won't have it available this time. And then you see, what does Scream have in the locker? Has he got a Hebo? Is he going to pull out the Pos? Is there an Alquang maybe in the works? A character who I think falls off pretty hard in the late game, but we'll see what the Dragons have in store.
I mean, we saw Aqua play Alquang solo in the qualifier in LAN and looked pretty good on it. I think that was the best look that the Valkyries had in that tournament, so wouldn't be too surprised to potentially see something like that, though that is kind of more of an Aquarius special potentially in the solo than something that fineokay is known for taking, as the Jade Dragons taking a little bit of time here to talk this one over. They saved fineokay's pick for last in the last game, and wouldn't be surprised to let fineokay get the counter pick again.
Yeah, it certainly could be the case. We haven't really mentioned the Hades, which is something that could be gone too. I think a fantastic soul laner if you need some magic damage. Has a good matchup in the Nem until late game when you're in Pillars of Agony, you think you're going to be a lot tanky, and then that just gets stripped away from you. That could be the call the Jade Dragons don't want to go to, and that is going to be that adaptation. So the Chulainn gets locked in, holding on to that jungle pick till last. You still think that magical damage could be on the way, and both of those water boys could be a hit for Scream.
Still there. Oni Warriors now have to make their call on who they want this Cern to go to. Dardez, the man on your screen, piloted it well in game 1, but not well enough to find the win. Hera banned away this time around, and I was wondering if the Warriors would just say, again, who cares about the bad matchups? Let's just give Dardez the pick he's most known for in the mid lane. Ended up getting banned away because they didn't top 3 it. And now you wonder what the plan is. Personally, I want to see Dardez on something besides the Cern. I think I'd like this Cern to go to vote this time around and for him to switch it up.
I think that would be good. I think maybe even if they take the Rama, they could switch them around. Give the Cern the matchup that people have been going towards in the duo lane versus this Ishtar, and let Vote try and control the game. I feel like he started off that last game really, really well. Vote was pumping out damage, but we've got Agni for Dardez, one of his traditional picks. I remember him playing this support back in about Season 2, Season 3, so we'll see what he can do with it in the mid lane.
And all that talk about water, instead we get some lava here for Scream. It's Pele as the pick for him. How do you like the Pele pick here, Trelly?
I mean, it's tremendous early aggression. It's got a decent matchup into Nem early. My only issue is that you don't have that magical damage. Physical protections are going to get a ton of value here for the Oni Warriors. If you get off to a great start and just snowball with physical damage, because it's a bit stronger than magical damage early on.
Right.
If you can keep that snowball rolling, there's no problem. If this game goes late, where you've got this Agni, this Cernunnos, and this Nemesis, it could be trouble for the Jade Dragons.
And this Agni pick, as you said, Hazer, one that we haven't seen a whole lot of players playing. We saw it a little bit at the qualifier land from a couple mids here and there. I feel like Agni's one of those picks that, especially the less you play against it, the stronger it feels when it gets pulled out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the build path right now really suits Agni as well, which is why we kind of see him rise back up into these top-level games. Soul Gem, a good item for him. Soul Reaver, an excellent item for him. Can proc that with his passive, his bombs, and all 3 of his abilities, so can absolutely pump out damage in the late game.
I'm expecting big things here from Dardez. The big question on everybody's mind, though, is did the Warriors do enough in order to win this game and extend this set? Trelly, you think
I'm
they got it?
I'm a big fan of what they did. I think so.
Hazer, how about for you?
I feel like we might be going for a 2-0 here.
We'll have to wait and see. Casters are ready to take it away. It's Dave and Gore to bring you the action for game number 2 between the Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors.
I don't know, Goremizer. I'm having a hard time figuring it out. Do the fans want a game 3? Do they want the Oni Warriors to roar back here? Or are the Jade Dragons taking this one 2-0 because the way Pegon just played lit up the room? Jade Dragons fans, I'm sure, enthralled with what they just saw. But the Oni Warriors, Gore, the desk, they feel like they've drafted something that can get them back into this set.
And honestly, even ignoring the draft, I saw something very important. It was a very NeilMah moment, right? The huddle.
That's right.
They
get
that last lock in, you get them in, you can see very, very verbose, making sure everybody's got their heads on tight. And I'm starting to see smile. Like, they were not looking very happy going into it.
That's right.
Afterwards, suddenly you're getting smiles. You know, you got chuckles smiling. A lot of moments from them, I think, that we got. That patented NeilMah TM moment that came out right there. And honestly, that's such a huge deal. Like getting that mental reset, you go down 0-1 early on, you look and feel like you're doing pretty good in game number 1, but it just slips through your hands because of the engage. So what do? They change the engage. And I really like, again, like the desk said, the shift up that the Warriors have made. Pushing us to 3, it's going to be a lot of play on field. Pegon just got a quadra on this Ullr, and you let him go back to it. So I think there is going to be a little bit of work cut out for him. But as long as they can get there, I think that this early game is going to be where they change up a lot of it.
Now, Gore, we talked about it, you and I, just kind of passively while the picks and bans were going on. The same vibe of composition from the Jade Dragons. Let's get into game number 2 as the Dragons and the Oni Warriors brawl it out in our third quarterfinal of the day. It's got to be momentous here from the Oni Warriors, Gore. Such a statement gets made by the rookie, by the Jade Dragons in game 1. They tell us in game 1 they can win a game at the drop of a hat. The Oni Warriors, I think they got to take control of this one. I don't know if we're coin flipping Fire Giants later in the game and winning here in game 2.
But what I love is the adjustments, because if you look at it, and you know, we have to give them the credit where credit's due. First off, you know, you get the Pele picked up later on. You're going to be able to rock a nice Magic the Gathering skin, as we saw a little earlier. But the thing that's really important to me is that you still have a lot of that same engage, but still a late game oriented, kind of late game, maybe patient team. Whereas on the other side, what you're going to be dealing with, an Agni, you can get hands on a little earlier, Nemesis, you can get hands on a little faster. The Bellona, I expect rotations from. And so even though you've kept some pieces the same, I think there's a really big deal to make sure that you're still going to be able to find a lot of these engages. And I have a lot of faith in the Warriors to make this work early on. Whether that means Furies, First Bloods, when they happen, it's going to be a massive difference for them. And Dave, I think it's going to be Qvo. If I'm looking at anybody, I feel like this Nemesis, and you know, we were actually talking about this when they locked it in, because you said I'm always curious as to whether or not we want to rely on Qvo's Nemesis.
I know.
And I said, if I go into a game not liking it, then it usually pops off. And if I go into it loving it,
it's funny how that works.
It goes half and half. So we'll figure out which one we're going to get today, because I felt kind of neutral about this one.
I know.
It doesn't really help anything,
Non-committal, Gore. I have no idea what to do with it. But, you know, I think that the Warriors fans can feel some comfort.
Yeah.
And the comfort that the Warriors themselves found with one another just now. You know, I imagine a lot of that is, guys, we don't want to go out right now. We still got something to say about this World Championship. This would be a heck of a way to start it off, as PandaCat's got a backflip away. Has a little damage for NeilMah as well. Oh no, is this suddenly getting flipped back through? Vote dashes forward. And although health trades exchanged on left, no big winner between the Dragons and the Warriors.
Pressure in this lane is very, very important between the two of them. Being able to find the pulls, the amount of setup that Maui brings, and you know, we've had this conversation in the past, typically with Yamoja, but Maui, maybe even more so in that vein, or at least in a very similar one, can do a little bit of damage on his own, but a lot of his kit, a lot of what you're going to get out of him is just setup. And that's a lot of what Mike is going to have here, but it relies this early on PandaCat, finding the shots, finding pressure. Meanwhile, Neil, Fafnir, early levels, getting hit by that hammer, just the amount of presence he can have in a lane, it can catch you off guard. And with the Cernunnos beside you this time around, the clear should be decent enough. You feel confident fighting.
Scream's here, it's level 3, and he wants to start game 2 off fast. NeilMah, they both play it about as perfectly as you can. Scream walks through the dual lane, gank potential, but no gank execution. In Gore, you know, we just talked about it. The Oni Warriors kind of need to take control of this one. That is going to be so hard to do. Scream playing one of his best picks ever. This Pele, ridiculous for Scream as far as putting his foot down early in the game and deciding where the game goes.
And again, I think as far as very specifically his play style goes, the way Scream plays, the get in, get something done, whether it costs you your life or not, Pele kind of embodies that to a level that I think is really going to enable him. A lot of very good dive, decent burst that comes down to it. It's going to be difficult to chase down an Agni. You have to force his dash first, same thing for the Kern. And I think that's what we're going to see, a lot of those little moments where you can show up, but unless you're catching them truly off guard, there's going to be some really good retaliation from the Warriors, good safety mechanisms from the Warriors to keep them in a level spot, make sure that the Dragons aren't going to be able to tackle too much early on from him, despite the fact that I think he's got some of the best presence. You also have to then tackle the fact that, yes, you as Pele are going to do great, And with a Chulainn, you might be able to find a kill. When you look at the Ullr, all of a sudden your build's kind of in a spot that, yeah, you're not dealing the damage yet. Same thing's going to be for your other carry. You might have to wait a little while if you're Scream, despite the fact that you want to get it done on your own.
I think what's important to look at as well, Gore, is it's still 4 Fizz for the Jade Dragons. In itemization, Dardez puts a little damage towards Pegon. Looks like he'll be fine for now. Itemization did not feel like it caught up to the Jade Dragons and then slowed them down necessarily. It was the Warriors itemization. Could be facing similar pitfalls here in this game. It was an obvious sovereignty, right, early, obvious Fizz defense stack for the Oni Warriors. I imagine you're looking at a lot of the same stuff here. I'm actually intrigued, Gore, how later on in the game, the poke battle between Dardez and Pegon ends up looking. Rain fire around dances, you're talking fire giants 10, 15 minutes from now, versus Pegon, who will toss an axe and one-tap you if left open. That'll be a crazy dynamic. One step out of line when you got this much poke damage really changes the ebbs and flows of eventual fire giant fights.
And I think the biggest thing for the Warriors, the biggest dynamic change that they have that is something I'm a huge fan of, is just, in general, the engage, because it plays off of that poke, right? You already have Nika who can jump in, massive stun on the ult, but also the field that gets left behind by a Bellona can really enable your team. Qvo, I mentioned this earlier, but I think he always feels a little more comfortable on the Nemesis. We saw it throughout early portions of this year as well as last year. One of his best gods that he was just able to bring. But it's really the Agni, right? You go into last game, you've got some roots, some cripples from the Artio, and you're looking at then a hammer from Neil, and that is your CC. Now you've got a massive combo with any of the flames and the noxious fumes. So Dardez has a lot of easy setup for your team. Nika's bringing a stun, Qvo's bringing slows, but also a lot of shred. And I think it really gives the team something they were lacking in game number 1 that the Dragons had in spade. They still have a lot of their setup, a lot of their CC. So I think you, as the Warriors, still have to be worried about a lot of that, especially in some of the late game team fights, but you've given yourself a much better fighting chance going into a comp like that because you've picked up things like the Agni and the Bellona.
Well, what worries me for the Oni Warriors is now Mike had a really nice game on Maui and has played this pick very nicely. I don't think we've seen the 5-alarm massive landfall setup just yet. It's been a lot of individual picks where earlier today Genetics had maybe one of the best Maui games I've ever seen. It's one of those picks that in my brain, especially when it's Mike who's playing it on the other side, playing with Firebit. QvoFred's gonna wrap behind fineokay. No, he won't. He'll take a deep breath. Potentially waiting on that transformation to timeout. No, Dardez gonna get pushed back in mid as well. Blue buff's gonna be up. But it looks like QvoFred just happy to farm up a bit of the backside of the jungle here. Nika will get his own blue buff. Scream might catch Qvo, who avoids a lot of the initial burst, but Qvo's gonna get dashed on. He'll drop his ult onto Scream, and the 1v1's about to become a 2v1 if fineokay can initiate, but Nika has rotated out of solo as well. What's happened to Dardez? He's taken an axe and a landfall! PolarBearMike! He's arrived, and it's Jade Dragons on first blood.
At least he gave him a beautiful headstone. The island looks really good there.
Looks real nice.
Just an unfortunate position to get caught out in for Dardez, right? A lot of damage. And that's just like, here, you're still stacking Transcendence if you're Pegon right now. That is not the late game damage we started to expect, but something that you have to be worried about, I think, if you're in mid. I was actually just thinking that the pace of the game for the Warriors, maybe not something that I was completely on board with. It's always really awkward early on because you know there's good damage from the Dragons. You have to play cautiously, but you've got some really good gods that can get hands-on early on. And then you fall into a moment like that, and I think you have to slow play it for a few more minutes. Yes, it's going to give a little advantage over to the double hunter, but getting your team into a spot, specifically getting Qvo into a spot where he can feel really confident in some of these fights and the setup, with some follow-through from Dardez is going to be massive.
Expecting Dardez is going to need some time to wind up anyway, but my goodness, Gore. I mean, it's such a pick ban conundrum, isn't it? Right? I mean, if you're the Oni Warriors, you're not thinking Pegon's about to go back-to-back 3, triples, quads, pentas, whatever on you, right? But already you can feel, and it's just that gank right there. It was really nicely played by Mike and Pegon.
Yeah.
But a certain level of lane control from this Ullr. It's kind of a flow state type god, as we've talked about plenty of times in the past. Dardez will, be okay long term.
Yeah.
And they don't have beads. You're thinking about where exactly is the jungler of the Jade Dragons right now? He's chasing down QvoFred, but Fred gets dashed on, he'll avoid it. Oh, Nika! Get out of jail free card for QvoFred, and Nika on the big play keeps his jungler alive.
And it got really dangerous at the end there. You have to remember, like, the AoE autos that come after that dash. Scream's holding onto him. Nika, there's the spot where if you get the right angle, maybe a step shy from Qvo, still results in a kill. They play it well, right? You get the stun, create the separation, and slowing Scream down. I mean, that's been a huge deal. This Pele, you had mentioned it, one of his best gods, if I remember correctly, got the pentakill this year on this god.
5 M's, 5 kills, is that what you're saying?
That exact play. By the way, up on the Golden Bolts for one of the nominees for Esports Play of the Year.
I gotta hear my voice again.
Yeah, unfortunately
So
for you,
unlucky.
everybody else loves it.
Unlucky.
And unlucky for Scream right now that he kind of had the dampers put on him. That's twice he's gotten aggressive onto Qvo, twice it's felt like he should get a kill, and twice that it's fallen just a little short. When it comes down to Fury play, when it comes down to side aggression, honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing them come back to this side of the map, left-hand side, try to get something rolling for your team. If you get a clean kill, maybe not onto Neil, but if you can take out Vote, the Fury becomes a much more viable option for you. You can start rolling an early lead.
It's where the burn will be for the Jade Dragons. Now, QvoFred Gore, in the last couple of initiations that we've seen, now none of them have resulted in kills, equal in level, with Scream, doing just fine, but it's been a lot of back foot Nemesis, right? Divine Judgments dropping to slow your opponent from catching you down. For Scream has been asking a lot of questions, and he'll do the same to the Pyromancer. None of the Oni Warriors on the right side, and that'll be first objective of the game to the Jade Dragons. It's simple, it's clean, and it's helpful for the Jade Dragons with golden experience.
Again, small shifts, but the way the game one went, the way the games so far, the event have been going, you can maybe feel the level heads, the tenure of playing in front of a crowd already for the Dragons, starting to keep things ahead for them.
Agreed.
It's just these small moments though, right? Right now, Pyromancer. Is it a huge deal, grand scheme? Not as big as it could be. But it really does open up the door. I mean, like you said, it's a little bit of gold that's going to go into your pocket. If I'm looking at anything, I'm keeping my eyes right now on Pegon's build specifically. Because it felt like once he got his second item, he started showing up and fights were happening more often. Once he hit his third item,
I know.
He's looking for kills. He just finishes a Hydra. I mean, this is the moment for Pegon, where I think this game can start to show up a lot more out of the mid lane. And if I'm the Warriors, I'm a little worried about it.
It's what we talked about with needing to take control of the game, right? What you don't want is to let this game just slowly bleed away from you, especially not on the end of just one kill.
No, not at all.
But it really feels like Migo or the Oni Warriors just haven't found where they want to funnel their aggression yet. Where QvoFred has received a lot of pressure from Scream just in the jungle.
Yep.
I'm not sure we've seen an answer on purple or blue or in the jungle or over in mid from the Oni Warriors just yet. Now there is potential confidence that eventually this composition will be able to go toe-to-toe, more standard. You got ranged magical damage. Oni Warriors, heck, they might not even be worried about the way that the game has gone so far.
I think they should be a little worried, though. And it's only in one role.
All right, never mind.
Oh, hold on. I feel
They're terrified. They're so scared.
Most of them are fine.
But
And admittedly, Neil should be fine
we're
as
fine.
well mentally.
Okay, we're good.
Just because of what we know. Farm-wise, Neil should be a little worried. 2 levels down, he's a full tier 3 down. Maybe it's just because he hasn't back. He should be able to afford something as of right now, but it feels like that kind of gap, especially for a Fafnir, very difficult to overcome. You're big in team play, especially with your ultimate, but when you've picked up something like a med so early on, you've only got the Sov, you've kind of invested in a different way than Mike. And it feels like Mike has had a much better grip on this game so far as supports go. I think that's where some of the eyes need to be, is what kind of presence Neil can start bringing. And granted, a lot of it is going to be down there on the stage and the communication factor with the team, but I think a lot of it should also have to rely on some of these plays and the shot calls.
I mean, it's crazy different as far as initiation goes. I almost tested fate, I feel like. Earlier on, I was talking about, all right, we haven't seen the craziness from Mike just yet. Now, we haven't seen 2, 3, 4-man landfalls yet, but the picks, the presence of Mike, even just with the 1 kill, has given me some confidence in the way that this Jade Dragons team are going to be fighting a bit later on. Gold Fury, Goret stands, but for how much longer? Double ADC composition, it'll burn through this objective quickly. This is a fight. These are so sneaky. These fights are so sneaky. If you get baited in, if you're the Oni Warriors, heck, even if you're the Jade Dragons, or on a Gold Fury early in the game, you handedly lose that fight and the Gold Fury, you're looking at a totally shifted game.
Yeah.
And so for the Oni Warriors, good. I think that a bit of pressure gets the Jade Dragons off.
And really, it's because it works the same way the other side. If the Dragons overcommit to something like the Fury, Pyromancer when it comes back up in a few minutes, suddenly you're in this spot where you're getting Agni bombs dropped on you, you've got a Nemesis that's shredding one of you, Bellona dives deep, like you suddenly get picked apart, and unless you have really good retaliation, which with the ultimates they have available, I think they have the capabilities of, you just find yourself in a very precarious position. And so I think keeping yourselves much more on, I mean, you're on a fulcrum, right? You're teetering to one side or the other. It just depends on where the lever's gonna go. And I think for the Warriors, playing it safe, I'm keeping my eyes specifically on Dardez's build, and what he's going to be able to provide, keeping my eyes on Neil's level, 2 levels down still, and how impactful that can be. The second relic option for the Dragons going to be around if they decide to fight in the next couple of minutes. Mike's just gonna have that blanket advantage. The team is gonna have that blanket advantage over the Warriors. But it always comes with that little bit of associated risk. Except for the Dragons, playing it out longer just means that Pegon gets more farm, which means Pegon gets more items, which means PandaCat, also a hunter, also going to hit harder, just now finishes the chin size. It feels like if they play it patiently, it still pays off for them a lot just based on what we saw in Game 1.
Now, Gore, there's a couple of things with the Oni Warriors I've been critical of. It feels like maybe QvoFred has been pressured out by Scream a decent bit. He's hearing me because he's ganking Pegon in mid, who's got to leap away. Ullr okay for now. A rotation through from the Chulainn changes the state of this mid lane fight, and the Dragons actually moving their way a bit closer to the left side of the map. My goodness, your mid laner's been TKO'd coming back from base, but should join this fight in time if there's a fight to be had.
Pegon loses the Aegis, but you lose both relics from Qvo. And it's a lot of really good poke. And like you said, a good TKO, but Pegon gets to come back, has good damage, actually doesn't have enough to finish off his item. So he doesn't really get any big power spikes from that back either, so you just waste time, strip away some farm, give that over to Dardez. And if you're looking at objectives, look, Agni is not the huge burst that you get out of a Scylla, not the huge burst that a Kraken brings, but it's still enough to steal an objective.
Mike, whiff on the landfall. And I think that's the Jade Dragon saying, okay, our initiation, we're limited now. Let's back away from the Gold Fury, but Nika, kin size in the back pocket. I have loved this build. Yeah. We've seen it from the Bellona. Opens up the opportunity for the Oni Warriors solo laner to get a bit more aggressive with damage. Going back to what I was saying, I was critical of QvoFred. I felt like was pushed out of the jungle a bit early on from Scream.
Yeah.
Has never fallen behind in experience up to this point. Has kept pace despite being on the back foot, and I think has stabilized quite nicely on this Nemesis. And same for Dardez in mid. Despite being ganked early, lost first blood, has played this laning phase over the last 10 or so minutes wonderfully. And I think those are the things the Oni Warriors wanted to limit. The question then ends up being, have you dictated enough of this early game? Do you need to dictate more of this early game? We're really in mid-game now. To make the Jade Dragons uncomfortable. But Gore, I'm not, sometimes you can feel the state of a game.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling like the Oni Warriors are uncomfortable right now. It honestly feels like both teams stabilized and fine with the state of the game here at 17.5 minutes.
I mean, you're talking about experience, and when you look about it across the board, nothing's too crazy. You look at gold, 2,000, it means
it's been that way for a while.
I was going to say, it's kind of plateaued. It's not even the full 2K, 1,800. And at 18 minutes in, man, that just does not have the weight behind it. When you split it across 5 people, it just does not have the punch.
Tier 1 items here
as, a real true lead for the Dragons. You negate some of it if you can actually pick up.
This would be a good pull.
And maybe a Pyromancer over on the right-hand side for the Warriors.
Well, the Warriors are going to get the Pyro unless fineokay steals it away, but a Gold Fury pulled by the Jade Dragons as well. So Onis get the Pyromancer. Can they rotate to left? Do they want to? No, they don't. Gold Fury to the Jade Dragons. Finally, the stalemate is broken. Jade Dragons pick up Gold Fury, trade it out for the Pyro on the flip side.
You have to remember a couple patches ago, they made it a lot more worthwhile picking up these Furies, especially with how it scales in the late game than what you're going to get out of a Pyromancer.
That was a conscious decision, though.
Yeah.
For the Warriors. They chose that.
A safe play. you're guaranteed to get that gold, and their worst case scenario, especially with the way things, you just kind of move the numbers up slightly, right? It's a few hundred gold that the Dragons get compared to where they were before. And so it doesn't stress you out heavily. And I think it does give a little bit of breathing room, right? Now you've made it so there's only one big neutral objective on the board.
Stay quiet. We're about to heat up, though. Nika should be okay, is. Scream finally makes his presence known in one of these lanes. After it was Mike who assisted in the early first blood. Dardez picks up Poly now on the Agni. I'm talking big burst numbers here at some point. I can't wait, Gore. I'm imagining we're going to see some type of duel between Dardez and either Pegon or PandaCat. Those Poly procs, they catch you off guard. Could make a difference. Adds a little bit more burst to this Agni build.
It's also this, and we talk about this a lot, but the weird portion when you get to a game like you're 19 and a half, gonna be 20 plus by the time a fight breaks out, by the time you're actually engaging onto Dardez or vice versa. And you don't know what his damage output feels like yet. You've seen it a little bit on the mic, but you really haven't gotten to see a lot of this team fight. And we've talked about this in the past. When you're not skirmishing early on in the game, when you go 20 minutes without really having a massive team fight, those damage numbers creep up on you. All of a sudden, the way the team fight rolls out, it feels incredibly explosive. It feels so fast compared to the 20 minutes that have passed so far. And that's a little bit, I think, worrisome for both sides, right? Dragons, if you're in this kind of position, then you are in a spot where if you get too aggressive, Dardez, like you said, with some polyprocs, with a build, maybe not going to be the burstiest of all things. It's going to be a lot more damage than you're expecting. And stuns as well really lead their way over towards the Warriors.
Oof, close.
And sometimes it's little plays like that, just a dash, keeping a cool level head for the Warriors to make sure that they can transition into a team fight pretty properly.
Gore, I want to test your knowledge of me really quick.
Okay.
Where do you think I am on the scared meter?
Like
Fire Giant
scared
dance?
about like just the game
yes.
for the Dragons, the Warriors, or
Either
just
way,
in general?
Just the momentum that's built up here, the potential energy that's yet to turn kinetic. 0 to 100, how
out of 100?
Percentage-wise, we're on a loading bar right now.
77.
Gore, you're spot on. I'm 80% scared at this point,
Nailed it.
just because of the way it's built up. Because we've arrived, right? NeilMah still though has not caught up to PolarBearMike. That level discrepancy
It's actually
still there.
spread.
Just now hits level 12, and so itemization-wise, NeilMah and the Oni Warriors are going to want their support to go back, pick up that second relic before the next fight really kicks off. Counter argument is maybe if you're Neil, all I want to do is transform, see if I can find a hammer like that. Maybe spread out a coerce, and that's all I need to do. For now, forces the beads from Pegon. How about this call?
I love plays like this because when you get a hammer like that, it's just the beats. That's all you needed. But Pegon's going to be so hard pressed in a team fight to try and get as aggressive because one of the biggest safety mechanisms, one of the safest things you have as an Ullr.
He's got bracer.
Is those beats. So not having that is going to feel a little worse. You have, like you said, the bracer, as well as a med, so if the fight goes wrong for the Warriors, you have a little bit of retaliation. But I think pulling those beads, I mean, you now have a little over 2 minutes that you can play around with. Fire Giant, maybe a little aggressive, but with the Fury coming back up and just under a minute, same thing for the Pyromancer. Probably play with some of the field.
Yeah.
Pyromancer feels a little more likely. If you get caught out on the left-hand side 20+ minutes in, it's just going to be an easy kill.
Wow, Nika against 3, but QvoFred gives his solo laner some assistance. Qvo on the first, but oh my god, Panda! He's got a triple stun on the back of the fight! Fino lets out a roar and trades it 1 for 1.
Honestly, still feels like it's a little worthwhile, though. Nika, great frontliner, great presence, but Pegon, the damage numbers, the expectation that I have. After a quadra kill in game number 1, are you kidding me? Yes, get rid of him. Force the Aegis. You still have a minute and a half on the beat, so I love that kill for the Warriors. Nika's going to be back, teleports up. If he upgrades it, should be around. Unfortunately for the Warriors, despite the fact that I think kill goes in their favor, map state maybe doesn't match up the way that they would like it, right? You get that presence immediately onto a tier 1 tower, which, first off, wild that we're still talking tier 1s 23, 24 minutes into the game.
I know.
But that's going to be a little bit of gold.
That was the first tower of the game.
It means a lot.
My goodness, it was. It was the first tower of the game. Pyromancer over to the Oni Warriors. That'll help on some resets if the Fire Giant begins to make its presence known a bit further.
You know those cans that have
There's
like
so many
the
cans.
spring-loaded snakes inside
Oh
of them?
yeah.
This is what that game feels
Have
like.
you ever gotten got by one of those?
I want to say no, because that's true, but I also know Katie's in the crowd, and now I'm really
Yeah,
worried
now you
that
should
with
be worried.
that knowledge, I'm going to get
Katie's
one.
gonna buy one, and you're in trouble.
That is the exact kind of thing this feels like.
I
right?
agree.
Where you're just, you know, the minute you crack it open, something's going to spring out at you. You just don't know what it's going to be yet. And I feel like that's where both of these teams are at, because all it takes is one little misstep. You get a little over-aggressive somewhere, and suddenly the other team has wiped 3 of you off the board, and the other 2 are turn tail and run back to the base. I think when you look over towards getting small objectives, small leads, the Dragons have to count what they have in pocket a little better.
Whoa. I talked about the Oni Warriors needing to decide their fate a bit in this game. This would be one way of doing it. Fire Giant picked up. Response from the Jade Dragons fast enough to drop the FG. This is where Dardez can go big. QvoFred narrowly avoids what was the pullback. It was the bubble on the Nemesis that makes the difference there. PolarBearMike pulls a bit of utility away from the Oni Warriors.
But I love, again, it's these small moments where you pull utility from the Warriors, or in the last fight you get a kill, but then they turn it into something on the map. Are these tier 1 towers the most lucrative thing 25 minutes in? Absolutely not. They mean very little in terms of the larger gold drop pool, but it opens up a map state that you just did not have access to. You talk about weakening the Titan, that counts, right? Every single tower counts towards that health, but also you're now 1,000 gold higher than you were before, and you have access to tier 2 towers. If you can force a fight around a Fire Giant, if you get the Fire Giant, whether it's with a couple of kills or just naturally being able to sneak it, you're gonna be able to knock down some Phoenixes with a nice advantage.
Now, Gora, I think it's important to recontextualize this. This is the SMITE World Championship life of the Oni Warriors on the line here. This is the best of 3. The Jade Dragons take this next fight, turn that into a Phoenix, turn it into the game. Suddenly the Oni Warriors out of it. Oni Warriors could push us to a game 3, which would be ridiculous against this Dragons team. So this is where mental toughness that we've talked about with this roster in the past, it builds up. You are 26 minutes into the game. There are 3 kills. You're down 2,000 gold or so.
Yeah.
And you've got one fight, potentially one fight, to stay alive in the SMITE World Championships against one of the best teams we've seen.
Well, and you mentioned, I mean, like the pressure that can mount on your shoulders. You have to remember, I mean, you know, the emotion we were talking about Nika last week qualifying to get here. This team didn't make it last year. They got knocked out in the qualifiers. They weren't able or permitted to play in the actual championship. So being here, knowing that you're down 1, you've got that fire burning under you to get aggressive.
Crazy story.
But if you're looking at the other side of the Dragons, you know, you almost have to wonder where the pressure starts to lie. Granted, with a 1-0 lead, probably not feeling it too much. But you're looking at the grand scheme of the event, you're also looking at a team that countless times has made it usually into the finals, but always falls a little short. But then you look at last year, a quarterfinal knockout from an underdog in the Scarabs, surprising everybody at the event. Definitely want to try and make up for that, kind of showcase the dominance that they've shown in the regular season time and time again, and bring it here up against a team that has a lot to lose, but pretty much also nothing left to lose, right? They can throw it all out there, knowing that they're down 1 game, and that everything matters on like you said, one massive fight 30 minutes in.
I think you could make an argument on the flip side, though, for the Jade Dragons. Same idea. You got a game in hand here. If you lose this fight, it's not tournament over. You'd surely just like to close it out, because this Oni Warriors team, Core, they deserve to be here. They fought their way through the qualifier tournament to the SPL this year. They fought their way for last chance qualifier. Our final set of the weekend, last weekend, qualify into the SMITE World Championship. The Jade Dragons selected them. This Oni Warriors team, they've been resilient, and now they might want to take control of game number 2. How's the Jade Dragons' response? They're here, but are they all here? Scream rotating out of mid, Fire Giant again gets dropped. Percentage slowly climbing, Gore. We're closing in on 85% scared here at the 28-minute mark.
Well, and this is where it gets even more awkward for these fights. We saw, that was a heat check for the Warriors. We know now how fast they can burn out a Fire Giant. You got 2 hunters on the other side that have been doing nothing but getting gold and adding items to their belt. Pegon and PandaCat, if they are given any leeway around an FG, they're just going to take it. I mean, they're going to be able to burn it down faster. There's still steal capabilities and things like that if the Warriors are nearby. But if you get caught sleeping, it's going to be the easiest fire giant for the Dragons. So you have to be aware of that. And you have to be a little more conscious. I love the plays from the Warriors, getting things like the Pyromancer. That gold lead was slowly growing. You needed to check it.
Fire giant again gets pulled. I've been baited one too many times. Are we doing it? Or are we fighting? Looks like neither is the option from the Oni Warriors here. Teleport, though. Drops over on right. That's fineokay, who did put some pressure on the left waves, now uses his teleport to get back to the right side of the map. Ends up not tilting the fight one way or another. Gore, a bit of a hush in the esports stadium right now, as Jade Dragons fans maybe a bit nervous how this one went. Oni Warriors fans, I saw Mr. and Mrs. NeilMah down there. They were cheering on this Oni Warriors team, willing some aggression out of this squad. But Gore, I'm not sure. There's not a held breath in the house right now. We crossed a 30-minute threshold. Razor thin margins in game 2.
I mean, now you're talking about a single pick leading to an enhanced fire. Like, it's very dangerous waters that, admittedly, I'm only used to seeing typically in Europe, right? It is very, which, admittedly, looking at the makeup there of the Warriors makes a little more sense, right, in totality. But dragging it out this far, all of a sudden you're looking at a fire giant that removes backdoor protections. All of a sudden you're looking at a fire giant and a play and a team fight that means so much more to this game. And a lot of it, drop of a hat. I mean, you know, the way, if you get one pick, that could mean everything here. So positioning, wards, coverage like that means so much to this team.
Neil's caught up.
And Neil's caught up. And admittedly caught up in the best way, right? Build is starting to match as well.
Oh, we're enhanced.
You're feeling
now.
confident if you're the Warriors.
We're enhanced. We have yet to have a fire giant this game, and the first one, if we get one, will be enhanced. Mike locked in place, but fineokay has found the back line. As Vote drops his ult, backpedals away. fineokay gonna get chased down by QvoFred. The Jade Dragons, they're losing their HP. And back in goes NeilMah. Dardez got a bit more poke. One pick, and out for the Oni Warriors.
But look, it's a TKO on the fineokay. He has to get out of there. Mike is low,
Nika has
and at
TP.
this point he has to back. With the TP from Nika, if he backs, heals up, comes back in.
They can reset, right? I mean, 40 seconds.
But they're so cautiously low that it also feels awkward to try and go for the FG.
Gore, this
you
might
can
be,
reset here.
This might be the widest gap we'll see.
It might be the only gap we'll see.
A one-man advantage may be as good as it gets for either of these two teams.
I think you absolutely have to start this up. Look, we're at the positioning of the Dragons. Granted, we can see everything. You should feel way more confident here if you are the Warriors. And especially with the damage from Vote.
I think
During that fight, the burn down he had was a massive, massive play and a massive win for the Warriors.
Can Pegon find the poke damage? We have seen magical plays from the Jade Dragons mid laner. Oni Warriors, they pull out the EFG. Scream is going to be up in 5. QvoFred, he's around the backside. He might catch PandaCat unawares here, who does not have beads, does have Aegis. Again, Fire Giant reset and Gore. Scream is respawned. Advantage gone off the map. Jade Dragons back to 5.
Advantage, I'm going to even give over to the Dragons. They're actually about to get a tier 2 knocked off the left side. That's going to open up some plays for them.
It will. Win
Fire
conditions.
Giant's still in the air, though.
Vote's still on it. Vote is still on the EFG. Nika, that's an Eagles rally to initiate. But where's the help? Where's the damage? There's Mike. Vote, he'll drop the Wild Hunt. And in the back line, Scream has found it.
They're so
Vote
low.
drops Qvo, but it's a trade back from Scream. Still some life in this fight. Nika, Dardez, they're way too low. Scream on a double, and the Jade Dragons have broken this game open.
And Nika's just too low. He can't do anything here. You're going to get chased down to the ends of the earth. Look at fineokay. He has his eyes set, and he knows what he wants. It's going to be an enhanced fire giant. No, they don't have the damage for it without PandaCat.
they're not doing it.
Pegon's not going to be able to pull it. They've got time. So they can reset, but they can jump back in.
The timers are going to be so close. I mean, 5-6 seconds between PandaCat and Dardez and Vote. I mean, that's a decent amount of time. If PandaCat can get there quick enough, double ADC composition late in the game,
you still get it.
You may be able to just quickly burn this.
You do have to contend. It's the question of how risky, right? We're going back to game number 1. How risky are you feeling if you're Nika and Qvo? Right play? Probably don't go for anything. Risky play? Play that can maybe be the Hail Mary for your team? You're trying to steal this objective.
How desperate are you feeling? That's the question. How desperate are the Oni Warriors? How scared are they of the way the Jade Dragons have played? Nika hovering close by, has Eagles rally.
He wants to go in.
Will look up and over the wall. Doesn't get it. Jade Dragons secure the FG. But Nika was real close. Enhanced Fire Giant on all 5 of the Jade Dragons.
Now it goes back to small, almost insignificant, it feels like at the time, things, but it's a trebuchet and left. It got killed off at this point, but it got that tier 2. So it's a lot of gold the Dragons had in their pocket. EFG with an opening on a Phoenix gives them a lot more opportunities. Only 2 towers left standing for the Warriors. Suddenly, I mean, you're literally on your last legs at this point, trying to just stay alive in the tournament. And again, the pressure is on, looking for the defense. You know, normally, Dave, we see the first Fire Giant, and I'm talking about the fact that maybe you can soft defense over a tier 2. I don't think you even bother stepping up to him. You've got a double hunter on the other side with EFG. Let that thing fall. The gold doesn't matter anymore. You just need to stay alive. It's about defending the base. I think the Warriors have a decent opportunity around that. Look, big AoE damage from an Agni, especially around the Phoenix line, kind of funnels the Dragons into an area for you. And that's going to be where the Warriors have to find it. The 6-man and the Phoenix adding some damage to it. The pressure is all in on that. Otherwise, you look at that last fight, you look at what this team was able to do, and it's a lot of burn from Pegon, a lot of burn from PandaCat. I mean, look, top damage by 2K.
Yep.
With a wide zone made by Mike and fineokay. Whether it's ripping relics from the other team or just forcing them to fall back to avoid a landfall, to avoid the knock-up, the space that they create for their carries has been more than enough. And now they're creating a lot of moments, little opportunities for them. Whether it's finding a tower, opening up a Phoenix. It's just success playing onto itself, and the Dragons are looking good wearing it.
Hasn't been a fatal mistake from the Oni Warriors just yet. At least not a massive one. You lose a lopsided trade a few moments ago. Gold has gotten a bit out of control just off the back of one individual play. Oni Warriors score individually. This roster, we've talked about how intertwined with some of the players of the Jade Dragons they are in SMITE World Championship history. A lot of those moments on the back of NeilMah, QvoFred, the SSG boys, and Dardez, and Nika, and Vote, and so much of what they've done in the past. Off moments like this, we have seen 10,000 gold deficits flipped around. We've seen big plays that have turned the game back.
Look at the damage.
PolarBearMike gets taken low. Pegon transforms! Oh! It's a moment like that. It's exactly what the Oni Warriors needed. Then it's Vote who finds the opening.
And I love the patience. You can see the want to chase down, maybe look for more. If you step too far out of that Phoenix, you lose a lot of your protection. You have, specifically, the Chulainn making sure that he's the pressure, the presence necessary. Feel too safe walking in your own jungle. So instead, you do have to take some sort of losses, right? You lose that Fury earlier, you lose the Pyromancer, but you take a grand scheme of wins. You remove 1 EFG. You're looking at your penalty kill, which is the biggest thing here. That power play, only 40 seconds left on it. So the EFG getting limited, and like you said, 10K. It's massive, but we're also at the point, I mean, look at the items. Yeah, like, it's so
here.
late in this game that you're talking Magi's Revenge, like you're looking at glyphs and wards making some of the differences here. I think the Warriors are in a spot. Stress, yes, but still in a prime opportunity to be able to fight.
Well, you're not worried about your left side, right? You don't have to worry about the fireman yet. Well, you're worried about it long term.
Yeah.
Around this Fire Giant, though.
You don't have to be stressed by the firemen.
That's right. More time to operate.
No pressure.
More time to operate while the Jade Dragons lurk in the waters. And it ends up being, Gort, you're far enough in these builds, if you're the Oni Warriors, you could absolutely one-tap Scream, Pegon, PandaCat, if they're just a bit out of sorts, just a bit caught off guard. Wonder if some of this maybe starts to come down to whether Scream can cleanly find that back line. The teams have been kind of 5v5ing right into one another. QvoFred as well, who did turn around his game. Remember, was under pressure from Scream in the first 10-15 minutes, if you can remember that far back. But it's found a kill, a couple of assists, 3 of 4 affected for the Oni Warriors. Rot Shred, gonna be crazy from that Divine Judgment. Steal, I suppose, depending on who you place it on. Haven't killed off fineokay yet. You're gonna have to get through this Chulainn at some point.
Man, that's such a hard fight to jump into.
Yep.
The engage, again, it was the same thing that they had in game number 1. The engage from the Dragons is really solid. Single target picks
Yep.
from NeilMah. That's where some of the strengths are going to be. Also burn
we're doing this again, aren't we?
It's the same rodeo.
Whoa.
Different dance.
Are we doing this again? Usually we're waiting for a fight to break out, but NeilMah is transformed right now. Bracer is down. Vote dealing plenty of damage to the enhanced fire giant. We got Blink's exchange. Vote's been knocked up by fineokay. And a big stun through from PandaCat. Scream! He's gone crazy. It's a double kill for the Jade Dragons. They may have just done it. It's Scream on the Pele in the back line. Dardez, though, able to trade out one. NeilMah against them all. And Gore, the Jade Dragons, maybe right around the corner of the semifinals.
With 60 seconds on these death timers, all you need is to knock down a Phoenix and march it down. It is all but official.
They've done it. The Jade Dragons, they buy their time in game number 2. They left it up to theatrics, dramatics, but they find a way to get it done anyway. Jade Dragons send the Warriors home. They will advance to the semifinals.
Clean play, man. Sometimes that's all it comes down to. You can see the energy on the stage.
And you can hear it in the crowd.
You can hear it in the crowd. The excitement from them has to be good. Wonder how Pegon's feeling after that first set. In front of a live crowd and a live environment like that, you get the hugs from the team around.
I think you can feel the anxiety drip away a bit.
Yeah, relief.
Relief for the Jade Dragons and their fans. An anticipated matchup here in the quarterfinals. Nothing but love and respect between these two teams. And all these players score, we talked about it during that game, have found their way against one another at points throughout SMITE World Championships, time and time again. Scream goes crazy in that last fight, ends the game at 4-2 and 3. 2 of those 4 kills in the last fight. Pele pivotal. Wondered if it would be which jungler finds the backline, and it sure was.
And a lot of it, again, is just that quick burst, that sudden in-game
Look at Panda.
that you're going to be able to pick up. You gotta be, look, the amount of damage that Panda was outputting, you gotta be feeling yourself a little bit, but you have to give some credit over to the Chulainn as well. fineokay 4-0 and 5 that game on that Chulainn. Game 1 has an incredible performance. I think the entire team showed up at the front line. Both games 1 and game 2 really opened up the door for those backline carries, the 2 hunters, to really get the work done. And I think that when it came down to it, coalescing as a team, it was a slower pace than we're used to seeing from the Dragons, but they nailed it.
And now the Jade Dragons await one of Leviathans and Titans in the semifinals tomorrow. Jade Dragons, they find a way to get it done. This one goes nearly 40, but the result's the same. Jade Dragons 2-0 to start off their SMITE World Championship weekend. The desk will break it down.
Thank you, Dave and Gore, and congratulations to the Jade Dragons as they punched their ticket to the semifinals, eliminating the Oni Warriors 2-0. Aggro alongside Trelly and Hazer to break it down. And fellas, we were worried about the Pele pick. You know, what is it going to do? Is it going to be enough damage that can get shredded? It was enough. Scream went big, particularly in that last team fight.
Yeah, it seemed like the Oni Warriors wanted to find some aggression, right? They were tired of that dance. They were like, hey, we're going to go into the Draconic transformation. We're going to get aggressive. As soon as Neil jumps in, fineokay blinks that jump. It completely immunes the stun, and then Scream goes to the backline. It seemed like they were ready for that play. It was a bit of a Hail Mary type of deal, but the Oni Warriors, they could feel themselves losing grip on that game. They had to do something.
I mean, that game was really long and very close at a lot of points, but even with the Jade Dragons getting a big fire giant and enhanced fire, I believe, the first time around, they don't really get anything out of it. Hazer, it was a great left side Phoenix defense as Mike just took too much damage.
Yeah, really strong defense from the Oni Warriors, and I think that kind of set the way that the Dragons wanted to play for the rest of the game. They played on the counter aggression. I think they kind of waited for the Warriors to win the game for them. They were like, we're not going to run at you, we're not going to pull the fire, we're going to counter engage, and they won every fight where they were doing that. The only time where they struggled is when they decided to kind of take the impetus in the game themselves.
And that's exactly what ended up happening there. The Jade Dragons get the ticket onwards towards the semifinals. The Oni Warriors, their season ends with a little bit of disappointment here in the quarterfinals, but overall, fellas, I mean, I feel like the Warriors put up a pretty good performance here. No big mistakes. You know, we didn't see that inconsistency necessarily. There's a difference between it being inconsistent and losing even when you're playing well. And I think that it's fair to say that the Warriors played well today, just not quite well enough to beat the Dragons.
Yeah, I would say so as well. I think they have a lot to be proud of here. They didn't just roll over. They definitely gave the Jade Dragons a well-fought matchup, but it just seemed like the Jade Dragons came to play this weekend, and they had a very strong composition that is very difficult to fight into early on. Even late, they were able to outplay a lot of what the Oni Warriors were trying to go for.
I mean, I hate to say it here, Hazer, but I don't know how much more of Maui we're going to see this weekend. He has just looked so strong when let through. First genetics, now PBM. Do you think that if you're looking at your semifinal set tomorrow, is Maui one of those gods that you feel like might not be one that you can afford to let go through?
Absolutely. He's looking so powerful in team fights. These ults are coming through and doing so much work, and I think teams are playing better with the 2 as well, using it to get in and out of fights and doing great stuff. There were a couple of odd moments there from Mike. I think he accidentally 3'd inside the Phoenix and ended up taking a couple extra hits there, maybe not getting out in time, but I think if you're on the second pick side going into the further rounds, you're probably going to be looking to ban this out.
Man, it's just an impressive fight there from Scream. What a great replay to show how patiently but not patiently he played that fight, and here it is at the very end. Blink in, get the cleave damage, the fadeaway one, just absolutely picture perfect there for the Jade Dragons as they punch their ticket and advance to the semifinals. This team with so much expectation, so many fans here in the crowd, all of a sudden starting to remember, like, oh yeah, I remember why a lot of people started to follow this team and why they got so much expectation in previous seasons. It's because they have the potential to play like that.
And they certainly do, and I mean, that's what we've been always looking for, right? We expect the Jade Dragons to play to that level every single time they touch the map. Doesn't always happen, but especially on the world stage, you gotta expect that type of gameplay. Anyone who's looking to go up against the Jade Dragons later on in the week, they better be ready for that type of gameplay.
And it's also really valuable, I think, that they didn't show very much here, Hazer.
Yeah.
I mean, they played Ullr mid both games. They played Ishtar Maui like they play Ishtar Maui. Of course they do. That's, I think, pretty important moving forward.
Yeah, was it only the jungle pick they switched up between the 2 games? So they've shown, 6 picks.
Yeah.
What else have they got? We'll have to find out tomorrow in the semifinal when they'll meet the winner of our next set.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It was a great set here, particularly from the rookie. We were wondering how he was going to do. I think he stood out, especially with that Game 1 performance. Pegon is standing by with Kelly on stage for a post-game interview.
Thank you so much, Aggro. Everyone, give it up for the rookie Pegon right here. To come in as a rookie and to get a quadra kill in your first game, how does that feel?
Honestly, it feels so amazing. Like the first game, I was super nervous, but like, what better way to kill that with the quad? So it's just a really good feeling.
Without a doubt. And in game number 2, obviously, it seemed like you guys were going for more of a safer route. Even in game 1, you guys would go for all 3 Phoenixes instead of going for the Titan. What was the decision behind that?
I'm not really too sure. It's just kind of how the game went. It was kind of hard to start a fight with their comp, and the game was just slower from that, I guess. Comps, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, obviously, it worked out for you guys. Tomorrow, you're going to be going up against the winners of the Leviathans versus the Titans. How are you feeling about tomorrow?
We're feeling confident, regardless of who we're playing. We're going to win either way.
Ooh, all right, some confidence right there. And obviously, after that quadra kill, you might have gotten some new fans in here. Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
Just that, love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pegon, and good luck tomorrow. And everyone, we're going to be taking a quick break before we get into the final quarterfinals.